Hey guys, tonight we're stepping aboard the most famous ship in history. Not during the tragedy, not during the chaos, but during the 4 days when Titanic was exactly what it promised to be. The most luxurious floating palace ever built. You're a first-class passenger in April 1912. You've paid somewhere between $150 and $4,350 for your ticket. That's between $4,000 and $120,000 in today's money. Some passengers paid even more for the most exclusive suites. Your ticket isn't just passage across the Atlantic. It's admission to a world most people will never see. You stand on the dock at Southampton, England. The ship rises before you like a steel cliff. 11 stories tall, nearly 900 feet long. From massive funnels pumping steam into the April sky. The hull is black, freshly painted. The upper decks gleam white. You've read the newspapers. You know this ship is unsinkable. Not because of hubris, but because of engineering. 16 watertight compartments. Doors that close automatically. The best marine architects in the world spent years designing this vessel. But you're not thinking about safety right now. You're thinking about your cabin. About the dining saloon you've heard rumors about. About whether you'll see John Jacob Astor IV or Margaret Brown or any of the other wealthy Americans returning from European holidays. A steward in a crisp White Star Line uniform approaches. He knows your name before you tell him. First-class passengers don't carry their own luggage. They don't navigate gangways alone. They certainly don't search for their cabins like common travelers. The White Star Line employs over 300 crew members just to serve first class. That's nearly 1 crew member for every 2 passengers. Your steward will remember how you take your tea. He'll know when you prefer breakfast. He'll appear exactly when needed and vanish the moment you want privacy. You walk up the gangway. The wood beneath your feet is polished teak. Inside, the entrance opens into a world that shouldn't exist on a ship. You're standing in what looks like a London hotel lobby. Carved oak panels line the walls. The carpet is so thick your footsteps make no sound. Electric lights, still a luxury in many homes, glow from bronze fixtures. The air smells of furniture polish, fresh flowers, and expensive perfume. This is the Edwardian era at its peak. King Edward VII died just 2 years ago, but his influence on style, luxury, and social ritual remains absolute. Everything around you represents British imperial confidence. The idea that technology and wealth can conquer anything. Even the ocean. Historians still argue whether Titanic represented the height of human achievement or the beginning of the end of an era. In 8 days, World War I will still be 2 years away. The Russian Revolution, 5 years. The Old World, this world of absolute class divisions and unquestioned luxury, has just a few more years to live. But you don't know that. You know you're on the finest ship ever built, and you're part of the most exclusive group aboard. A crew member directs you toward your cabin. You'll explore later. For now, you just want to see your room and perhaps take a turn on deck before the ship departs. Through the windows, you can see second and third class passengers still boarding. Their entrances are separate, of course. Different gangways, different decks, different worlds. The ship's whistle sounds deep, resonant, a sound that vibrates through the hull and into your chest. In a few hours, Titanic will depart Southampton, make brief stops at Cherbourg and Queenstown, then turn west toward New York. 7 days of crossing. 7 days of luxury that most people can't even imagine. You've heard about the swimming pool, the first on any ship. The gymnasium with its electric horses. The Turkish baths designed to look like something from the Arabian Nights. But mostly, you're thinking about dinner. Tonight's first meal in the dining saloon. The chance to see and be seen. Because in 1912, first class isn't just about comfort. It's about status. It's about belonging to a world where your name opens doors and your presence at dinner means something. You're here, on this ship, in this moment. And for the next 4 days, you'll experience luxury in ways that will never quite exist again. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're watching from somewhere in the world right now, drop a comment with your location and the time. I love knowing where these sleepy stories are traveling. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've settled into your cabin. You've unpacked what you need for the first evening. Now it's time to explore. And there's only one place to start, the grand staircase. You step out of your corridor and follow the sound of voices, the glimpse of light, the sense that something magnificent waits just ahead. You turn a corner, and suddenly you're standing at the top of the most photographed staircase in maritime history. Except no one has photographed it yet. In 1912, this is brand new. The staircase descends before you in a sweep of carved English oak. Each baluster, each newel post, each decorative panel has been hand-carved by craftsmen who spent months on this single feature. The wood glows under electric light, warm, honey-colored, impossibly smooth. The banister curves down through multiple decks like a ribbon of sculpture. But it's what's above you that stops passengers in their tracks. The dome, a massive wrought iron and glass skylight, soars overhead, flooding the staircase with natural light during the day. Right now, in the afternoon, the light is soft and golden. It catches the dust motes floating in the air. It illuminates the carved oak clock on the landing below. The clock face surrounded by two figures representing honor and glory crowning time. Historians still argue whether that clock was meant to be ironic, whether the designers knew they were building a metaphor about time running out, about glory being temporary, about honor mattering more than survival. Probably not. In 1912, clocks were just clocks. Decoration was just decoration. No one thought in symbols yet. But you're not thinking about symbolism. You're thinking about being seen. Because a grand staircase isn't just a way to move between decks. It's a theater, a stage where first-class passengers perform the ritual of being wealthy, of being important, of being worth looking at. You begin to descend. Your hand rests lightly on the banister, too light to suggest you need support, firm enough to look graceful. You practice this. Everyone has. The way you move in public spaces matters. The Edwardian upper class doesn't walk casually. They process. They glide. They occupy space with intention. Other passengers are ascending and descending. A woman in an afternoon dress of pale blue silk, her hat adorned with ostrich feathers that bob slightly with each step. A gentleman in a perfectly tailored morning suit, his shoes so polished they reflect the light. Two elderly women moving slowly, their jewelry catching the glow from the dome above. Everyone sees everyone. That's the point. The staircase connects 6 different decks, from the boat deck down to E deck. You can access the reception room, the dining saloon, the a la carte restaurant, the reading rooms, the smoking room. Everything that matters in first class opens off this central artery, which means you'll use these stairs multiple times per day, which means you'll be observed multiple times per day. No pressure. On the landing, you pause near the clock. The carved figures of honor and glory look down with blank classical faces. The clock itself keeps perfect time, wound and maintained by crew members you'll never see. Around the frame, cherubs and flourishes create a Baroque excess that somehow works, that somehow feels appropriate for a ship where excess is the entire purpose. You notice details the further you look. Carved flowers, geometric patterns in the metalwork overhead. The way each landing has a different decorative panel. Scrollwork here, floral motifs there, classical figures in another spot. White Star Line spared no expense. They hired the same architectural firms that designed grand hotels and country estates. They wanted passengers to forget they were on a ship. And it works. You don't feel motion. The engineering is too good. You don't hear the engines. The insulation and distance are too carefully managed. You could be in the Ritz in London or the Waldorf in New York. Except you're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, moving at 21 knots, cutting through water that's 2 miles deep. A steward passes, carrying a silver tray with tea service. He navigates the stairs without looking down, without hesitation, his balance perfect despite the tray's weight. He's done this dozens of times today already. He'll do it dozens more before his shift ends. The tray doesn't rattle. The china doesn't clink. Everything is smooth. Everything is effortless. Everything is designed to make you feel like you're in a space where nothing can go wrong. You continue down to the next landing. Through the windows, yes, there are windows on a staircase because why not? You can glimpse the ocean. Dark blue, calm today, stretching to the horizon. Other passengers barely glance at it. The ocean is just backdrop. The real show is here, inside, in this temple of carved wood and wrought iron. Some passengers use the elevators. Titanic has 3 elevators serving first class, a technological marvel in 1912 when most buildings still relied on stairs. The elevators are operated by crew members, decorated with mirrors and cushioned seats, slow and stately in their movement. But most passengers prefer the grand staircase, because elevators are private, and privacy defeats the purpose of being in first class. You reach the D-deck landing and step into the reception room. Wicker furniture arranged in conversational clusters. More carved wood, more perfect lighting, more passengers sitting, chatting, reading, performing the elaborate social dance of Edwardian high society. But you'll explore that later. For now, you've completed the ritual. You've descended the grand staircase. You've been seen, and that clock on the landing, honor and glory crowning time, continues ticking toward dinner, toward evening, toward all the perfect moments still to come. Let's return to your cabin, because calling it a cabin is like calling Versailles a house. You unlock your door, actual key, brass and heavy, and step into what can only be described as a floating apartment. The space that greets you would be impressive in a London townhouse. On a ship, it's almost absurd. Your suite has multiple rooms, not compartments, rooms. A sitting room with upholstered furniture, writing desk, and sofa. A bedroom with a full-sized bed, not a bunk, a bed, with carved wooden frame and actual bedding from luxury linen suppliers. Some suites have separate bedrooms for servants. The most expensive suites have private promenades, 50-foot stretches of deck that belong to you alone. The walls are paneled in different woods depending on your suite style. Some passengers have rooms decorated in Italian Renaissance style. Others get Louis XV. Some have Georgian paneling with delicate plasterwork. The designers wanted variety. They wanted each first-class passenger to feel like they booked a room in a different grand hotel. Your bathroom is perhaps the most shocking luxury. Private, fully plumbed, with running water, hot and cold. In 1912, many middle-class homes still share bathrooms or use chamber pots. Public bathhouses are common. Indoor plumbing exists but isn't universal. Yet here, on a ship, you have a bathtub with porcelain fixtures, a sink with brass taps, even a toilet that flushes. The tub is full-sized, not some cramped ship's necessity, but an actual soaking tub where you can stretch out and close your eyes and temporarily forget you're in the middle of the ocean. The water comes from massive tanks filled at port and heated by the ship's boiler system. You can take a hot bath at midnight if you want. Historians still argue whether Titanic's luxury actually improved the voyage experience or just made passengers feel entitled to survive. Whether all this comfort made people less prepared for emergency. Whether the ship's reputation for safety made everyone too complacent. The debate continues, bitter and unresolved. But right now, standing in your suite, you're just impressed. The electric lights have dimmer switches. You can adjust the mood. The heating is controllable with a small dial on the wall. Your bed has a call button that summons your steward without you having to leave the room or raise your voice. Press it, and within minutes, a crew member appears asking how he can help. The attention to detail borders on obsessive. Your luggage has been unpacked and arranged in the wardrobe by a stewardess you never saw. Your clothes hang on wooden hangers. Your shoes are lined up neatly. Your toiletries are arranged on the bathroom shelf. Nothing is disturbed, nothing is misplaced, but everything is somehow better organized than when you packed it. On the writing desk, you find stationery. Thick, creamy paper with RMS Titanic embossed at the top. Matching envelopes, a pen, and inkwell. The ship has a post office, an actual official Royal Mail post office, that will stamp and send your letters when the ship reaches New York. You can write home about your journey, about the luxury, about dining with millionaires. Though, oddly, you might not mention their names. Edwardian etiquette is complicated about fame. You acknowledge seeing important people, but you don't gossip like a tourist. You're part of this world now. You belong here. Acting impressed is vulgar. The porthole in your cabin is larger than you expected. Thick glass, brass frame, a small curtain you could draw for privacy. During the day, light streams in. At night, you see only darkness and occasionally the reflection of the ship's lights on the water. The ocean is very dark at night, darker than city dwellers can imagine. No light pollution, no coastal glow, just black water and distant stars. Your suite's furniture is bolted down. Not obviously, the craftsmanship hides it, but everything is secured against the ship's movement. In calm seas like today, you don't notice. But in rough water, unsecured furniture becomes dangerous. Designers thought of everything. The luxury looks effortless, but engineering underlies every detail. Some first-class passengers brought their own servants. Personal maids, valets, nannies for wealthy children. These servants have their own quarters, not in first class, but not quite in second class either. A strange in-between space. They eat in different dining rooms. They use different stairs. They exist in the margins of the ship's rigid class system, neither privileged nor quite crew. You test the bed. Firm, but comfortable. The mattress doesn't sag. The linens smell of starch and soap. Above the headboard, electric sconces provide reading light. You could spend the entire voyage in this room and be perfectly comfortable. Some passengers do, especially older travelers who find the social performance exhausting. But you didn't pay this much to hide. You open the wardrobe and consider your evening clothes. Dinner is in a few hours. You'll need to change, not just into something nice, but into the appropriate level of formal dress for the first evening aboard. There are rules, codes, expectations. Remember that grand staircase you descended earlier? You'll need to look perfect for your next appearance. Because in first class, your cabin is your private sanctuary, but the public spaces are your stage. This room, this mansion at sea, is where you prepare for the performance, where you rest between acts, where you're allowed to be yourself, if only briefly, before stepping back into the role of first-class passenger. Outside your porthole, the ocean stretches endlessly. Inside, you have hot water, electric lights, and a call button that summons help. The contrast is remarkable. The ocean is ancient, indifferent, powerful beyond measure. Your suite is modern, attentive, designed to make you feel invincible. Both realities exist simultaneously, separated only by steel hull and human confidence. But that's a thought for later. Right now, you have a few hours before dinner, and you're standing in the most luxurious cabin ever built on a ship, wondering what to wear and whether John Jacob Astor will be at your table tonight. You thought you packed light. You were wrong, because in first class, 1912, you don't wear clothes. You perform costume changes, multiple times per day, each outfit carefully chosen for its specific context, its precise moment in the daily social calendar. Let's walk through a typical day. You wake around 8 a.m. You ring for your steward. He brings breakfast on a tray. You can eat in your cabin if you prefer. Many passengers do. But whether you eat in bed or in the dining saloon, you need your first outfit of the day, morning dress. For men, this means a suit. But not just any suit. A morning suit with tailed coat, waistcoat, striped trousers, and a tie that's fashionable but not too fashionable. Your collar is stiff, starched to the point of discomfort. Your shoes are polished until they reflect light. Your hair is combed with pomade that smells of bergamot and bay rum. For women, morning dress is deceptively complex. A day dress with high collar, long sleeves, and hem that brushes the floor. Multiple layers underneath. Chemise, corset, always a corset, corset cover, petticoat, possibly 2 petticoats. Your hair is pinned up elaborately. Loose hair is scandalous. Your hat is modest but still decorative. Gloves, always gloves, even indoors. You're dressed. Finally, time for breakfast. But by 11 a.m., you need to change again for deck promenading. The outfit is similar but adjusted for outdoor viewing. Men might wear a Norfolk jacket and cap. Women switch to a walking suit, still formal, still corseted, but designed for movement. More gloves, different hat, a parasol if the sun is bright. You walk the deck. You see people. You're seen. By 1 p.m., it's time for lunch. Back to your cabin. Another change. Men switch to a lounge suit, less formal than morning dress, but still tailored, still perfectly pressed. Women change into an afternoon dress, often lighter in color, with different accessories, different jewelry. Your maid, if you brought one, or the ship stewardess helps with the buttons down your back, the hooks on your corset, the pins in your hair. Historians still argue whether Edwardian fashion was beautiful oppression or oppressive beauty, whether these layers represented sophistication or imprisonment, whether women enjoyed the ritual or endured it. The corset debate alone has filled academic journals for decades. Some argue corsets weren't as restrictive as modern people imagine. Others point to medical records of fainting, rib damage, and compressed organs. But you're not thinking about future academic debates. You're thinking about whether your hat matches your dress. After lunch, you have a few hours of relative freedom. Some passengers rest. Some read in the library. Some play cards in the smoking room, if they're men. Women aren't allowed in the smoking room, just as men rarely enter the reading and writing room. Around 4 p.m., it's time for tea. Another change. Back to your cabin. For men, the afternoon tea suit, similar to lunch attire but possibly with a different waistcoat. For women, a tea gown, which is actually less restrictive than other day dresses. Tea gowns are the secret rebellion of Edwardian fashion. You can wear them slightly loose. The corset can be less severe. Your hair can be marginally less formal. It's the closest you get to comfortable all day. Tea lasts an hour, maybe two. Sandwiches, cakes, and the ritual of being civilized while the ship cuts through the Atlantic at 21 knots. But then comes the main event, dinner. And dinner requires white tie. For men, this is the full formal uniform. Tailcoat in black, white waistcoat, white bow tie tied by hand, clip-ons are for servants, patent leather shoes, studs and cufflinks in gold or mother of pearl. Your collar is so stiff you can barely turn your head. Your shirt is blindingly white. You look like you're attending a royal wedding. For women, dinner is where you deploy your finest ammunition. Evening gowns in silk, satin, or velvet. Colors ranging from pale pastels to deep jewel tones. Low necklines, scandalous during the day, but acceptable at dinner. Bare arms, finally. Your corset is still there, but hidden under layers of expensive fabric. Your jewelry comes out. Real diamonds, real pearls, real sapphires. Your hair is arranged in the most elaborate style yet, possibly with decorative combs or tiaras, if you're bold enough. You look at yourself in the mirror. You barely recognize the person staring back. This is the performance at its peak. This is what you paid for. Not just the food or the cabin, but the chance to dress like royalty, to move through rooms full of other people dressed like royalty, to pretend for a few hours that you live in a world where beauty and wealth are the only things that matter. Your steward helps with final adjustments. Your collar, your cufflinks, the way your coat sits on your shoulders. Everything must be perfect, because you're about to descend that grand staircase again. Remember the clock, remember honor and glory, and everyone will be watching, judging, noting who wears what, who has good taste, who is trying too hard or not trying enough. The social pressure is immense. And after dinner, you might think you're done. Not quite. Some passengers change again for late-night activities. A smoking jacket for men who retreat to the smoking room for cigars and brandy. A simpler evening dress for women who gather in the reception room for conversation and music. 6 outfits. Minimum. Some passengers bring enough clothes for 12 changes per day. Their luggage requires multiple steamer trunks. Their valets and maids work constantly, pressing, cleaning, mending, preparing the next outfit while you're still wearing the current one. It's exhausting. It's absurd. It's exactly what you signed up for. Because in 1912, in first class, on the Titanic, you're not just traveling across the Atlantic. You're performing in the grandest theater ever built. And your costumes matter more than you'd ever admit. You give yourself one final look in the mirror. White tie. Perfect. Time for dinner. You descend the grand staircase in your white tie. Other passengers move alongside you, a slow procession of silk and diamonds, tailcoats, and tiaras. Everyone is silent or speaking in hushed tones. Dinner isn't just a meal. It's the culmination of the day. The doors to the dining saloon open before you. and you step into a room that shouldn't exist on a ship. The space is enormous. It stretches 114 feet long and spans the full width of the ship, 92 feet. The ceiling soars overhead, white and ornate with elaborate plasterwork. Crystal chandeliers hang at intervals, their electric lights creating a warm glow that catches the polished silverware, the white linens, the crystal glasses arranged at each place setting. 500 passengers can dine here simultaneously, and tonight, nearly all of them are present. The tables are arranged in careful configurations. Small tables for couples, larger tables for families or social groups. The most prominent passengers, the Astors, the Wideners, the Strasses, occupy the most visible positions. Not at a head table exactly, but positioned where everyone can see them without staring. A steward guides you to your assigned seat. Yes, assigned. You don't choose where you sit. White Star Line assigns tables based on ticket price, social prominence, and occasionally personal request. Some passengers paid extra to ensure good table placement. Others tried to manipulate the system through connections and careful negotiations. Your table has 6 seats. The other 5 passengers are already seated or arriving simultaneously. Brief introductions. Names you'll forget by dessert unless they're particularly important. A banker from Philadelphia. A textile merchant and his wife. A widow traveling alone. Rare but not unheard of in first class. Everyone is polite. Reserved. Waiting. The menu arrives. Not a single sheet. A bound booklet. Multiple pages listing the evening's offerings in French with English translations below. The menu changes every night. The ship's kitchen never repeats a dinner service during the voyage. Tonight's menu includes 10 courses. 10. You begin with hors d'oeuvres. Oysters, perhaps. Canapés with caviar. The portions are small, delicate, arranged on china, so fine you can see light through it. Then soup. Consommé Olga. A clear broth with vegetables and cream. Or cream of barley. Or both, if you're ambitious. The waiters remember which you prefer without being told. They've been trained to observe, to anticipate, to serve without intruding. Fish course arrives. Poached salmon with mousseline sauce. Or perhaps the turbot with hollandaise. The fish is fresh, caught at port, kept on ice in the ship's refrigerated stores. The refrigeration system on Titanic is state-of-the-art. 3 tons of ice per day to keep food perfectly preserved. Between courses, you pause. This is intentional. Edwardian dining isn't rushed. Each course has space around it. Time to digest. Time to converse. Time to be seen eating elegantly, dabbing your mouth with a linen napkin, sipping wine from the appropriate glass. The wine glasses are confusing. Multiple glasses at each setting. Different shapes for different wines. Red wine in larger bowls. White wine in narrower stems. Champagne flutes. Water goblets. The waiters pour without asking. They know which wine accompanies which course. You're not expected to understand. You're just expected to drink gracefully. Next comes the entree. In French dining terminology, this is the meat course. Filet mignon with chateau potatoes. Lamb with mint sauce. Roast duckling with applesauce. Or all 3, served on separate china. Each plate warm from the kitchen's coal-fired ranges. The meat is cooked exactly to preference. Waiters asked you earlier, casually, while serving soup, and somehow the kitchen knows your answer. Historians still argue whether Titanic's cuisine represented the peak of Edwardian gastronomy or excessive waste. Whether serving 10 courses to 500 people while third-class passengers ate basic stew represented justified luxury or moral failure. The debate gets heated. Academic papers still cite Titanic's menus as evidence of class inequality. Others argue that first-class passengers paid for luxury and received it. No apologies necessary. But right now, you're just trying to remember which fork to use. The salad course provides a brief respite. Mixed greens with simple vinaigrette. In 1912, salad comes after meat, never before. European tradition. Americans sometimes find this odd, but on a British ship, you follow British customs. Then punch. A palate cleanser. Champagne with fruit ice, served in small crystal cups. It's cold, sweet, refreshing after the heavy meat courses. You're beginning to feel full. You've eaten more in one sitting than some people eat in a day. But there are still 3 courses remaining. Roast course. This is different from the entree somehow. The distinctions are lost on you, but the roasted squab, young pigeon, arrives on fresh china, accompanied by vegetables and potatoes prepared differently than earlier. Then asparagus with hollandaise sauce. Then pâté de foie gras with celery. You're not just full, you're approaching immobility. But dessert is mandatory. Refusing dessert suggests weakness or, worse, poverty. The implication that you're saving appetite because you can't afford to waste food. So you accept the Waldorf pudding, or the chocolate eclairs, or the French ice cream, or the assorted fresh fruits. Your waiter doesn't judge your choice. He simply brings what you request, along with coffee or tea and small chocolates that appear without explanation. The entire meal lasts nearly 2 hours. Around you, conversation has moved from polite introductions to animated discussions. People relax after the 5th or 6th course. Wine helps. The room fills with the gentle sound of silverware on china, of laughter carefully modulated to avoid vulgarity, of 500 wealthy people performing the ritual of dining. The orchestra plays throughout. Positioned at one end of the saloon, 5 musicians in evening dress provide background music. Nothing too loud, nothing too energetic. Gentle waltzes and refined melodies that enhance conversation without overwhelming it. The orchestra will play later in the reception room, but during dinner, they're purely atmospheric. You notice the waiters never seem to rush, never seem tired, though they've been serving since breakfast and will continue until midnight. Never make mistakes with orders or placement. The training is rigorous. White Star Line doesn't hire casual staff. These are professional servants who've worked on ships for years, who know how to move through a dining room in rough seas without spilling a drop. Tonight the seas are calm, but the skills remain impressive. As dinner concludes, passengers begin to drift away. Some head to the reception room for music and conversation. Men disappear toward the smoking room for cigars and brandy. Women gather in the reading room or promenade the enclosed deck. You stand, napkin placed carefully on the table. Your white tie feels tighter than before, probably the 10 courses. But you've completed the ritual. You've dined in the most exclusive restaurant on earth. You've eaten food that costs more than some families spend on rent. You've performed elegance for 2 hours. And tomorrow night, you'll do it all again, with a completely different menu. The next afternoon, you discover the Café Parisien. Well, technically it's called the Café Parisien, but everyone refers to the adjacent palm court when they're being precise. The 2 spaces flow together, separated by potted palms and wicker furniture, creating an atmosphere that feels nothing like a ship. You enter around 4 p.m., the time when civilized people take tea. The space is smaller than the dining saloon, more intimate. Wicker chairs with cream-colored cushions, small tables scattered throughout, and plants. Dozens of potted palms creating a feeling of being in a conservatory or a fashionable Parisian cafe rather than in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The ceiling is white, with large windows that let in natural light. Except when you look outside, you see deck and ocean instead of city streets. The cognitive dissonance is intentional. The designers wanted passengers to forget where they were, to feel transported, to believe, even briefly, that they were in Paris or London rather than on a ship heading west at 21 knots. The room is already half full when you arrive. Women mostly, a few couples. Tea is technically mixed company, but men often skip it, preferring the smoking room or a nap before dinner. The women who gather here are dressed in their tea gowns, those slightly more comfortable afternoon dresses that don't require quite as much corseting. A waiter appears immediately. He doesn't need to ask. Tea is assumed. The only question is which variety and what accompaniments you prefer. The tea selection is surprisingly extensive. English breakfast, Darjeeling, Earl Grey, Assam, Ceylon, even Chinese green tea for the adventurous. The tea comes from White Star Line suppliers in London, packed carefully to maintain freshness during the voyage. You choose Darjeeling. The waiter nods and disappears. Around you, conversation rises and falls in gentle waves. Women discuss the weather, still fine, the ocean still calm. They comment on each other's jewelry, with carefully calibrated compliments that simultaneously admire and assess value. They mention which passengers they've seen, who was at dinner last night, who is traveling with whom. This is intelligence gathering disguised as courtesy. The orchestra plays in the corner. Not the same orchestra from dinner. There are multiple musical ensembles on Titanic, rotating through different venues throughout the day. These musicians play lighter fare. Ragtime, though not too energetic. Popular songs from London shows. Nothing that would disturb conversation. Your tea arrives. Not just a cup, but a production. A silver teapot on a silver tray. A matching cream pitcher and sugar bowl. A cup and saucer, so delicate you're afraid to grip them firmly. A small strainer for the leaves. Everything is monogrammed with a white star-line flag. The waiter pours the first cup for you, demonstrating the proper angle, the correct amount. Then he withdraws, leaving the pot for you to manage the rest yourself. This is the signal that you're competent, sophisticated, worthy of trust with expensive china. But tea isn't just tea. It's accompanied by a tiered stand of food that appears moments later. The bottom tier, finger sandwiches, cucumber with butter, smoked salmon with cream cheese, egg and cress, ham with mustard. Each sandwich cut into precise triangles, crust removed, small enough to eat in 2 bites. The bread is white, soft, fresh from the ship's bakery. Middle tier, scones, plain and fruit, still slightly warm, with small pots of clotted cream and strawberry jam. The scones are supposed to be split, not cut. Cream first or jam first remains a subject of heated debate. Devon says cream first. Cornwall says jam first. On Titanic, you're allowed to choose without judgment. Top tier, pastries and sweets. Small cakes, chocolate truffles, delicate cookies with almond or lemon flavoring, tiny fruit tarts with glazed berries. Everything is miniature, designed to be elegant rather than filling. You're still recovering from last night's 10-course dinner. But refusing tea would be socially unacceptable. Historians still argue whether afternoon tea was a genuine meal or an elaborate excuse for gossip, whether it served nutritional purposes or purely social ones. Some point out that upper-class Edwardians ate 5 meals per day: breakfast, lunch, tea, dinner, and sometimes a light supper. Others argue that tea replaced lunch for many women, making it functional rather than excessive. The debate continues in academic journals about food history and social customs. You sip your Darjeeling. It's perfectly brewed. Not too strong, not too weak. The water temperature was precisely controlled. The steeping time was calculated. The White Star Line trains its tea service staff extensively. Tea is too important to leave to chance. A woman at the next table catches your eye and smiles. You smile back. This is how connections form in first class. Not through direct introduction. That would be vulgar, but through proximity, gentle acknowledgement, carefully calibrated friendliness that never crosses into familiarity. By tomorrow, you might be nodding to each other during promenade. By the day after, you might exchange names. By New York, you might consider yourselves acquaintances. Social hierarchy moves slowly, deliberately. The palms around you create small zones of privacy. You can see other tables, but the leaves and fronds create visual barriers. It's possible to have a conversation without being overheard. Possible to observe without obviously staring. The wicker furniture creaks slightly when you shift position. It's one of the few sounds that reminds you you're on a ship. Otherwise, the room could be anywhere. The gentle rock is barely noticeable. The engines are too far away and too well insulated to hear. Outside the windows, the ocean is calm, blue, endless. You take a cucumber sandwich from the bottom tier. It's absurd, really. You're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and you're eating cucumber sandwiches from a silver tray, while an orchestra plays ragtime and potted palms sway gently with the ship's motion. But that's the point. The absurdity is the luxury. The impossibility is what makes it valuable. Anyone can eat a sandwich, but eating a perfectly prepared cucumber sandwich served on bone china while traveling 21 knots across the ocean, that's first class. The waiter circulates, refilling teapots, replacing empty sandwich tiers, ensuring no one's cup sits empty for more than a moment. His movements are practiced, efficient, almost invisible. He's there when needed and absent when not. Around you, the conversation continues its gentle rhythm. Someone mentions the ship's newspaper. Yes, Titanic has a daily newspaper, printed on board with news received via wireless telegraph. Someone else discusses the temperature, whether wraps will be needed for tonight's deck promenade. A third voice wonders aloud whether the Café Parisien serves wine with dinner. It does, but that's later, after the dining saloon service. You finish your tea and select a lemon cookie from the top tier. The flavor is delicate, not too sweet. The texture is perfect, crisp exterior, soft center. Someone spent significant time creating these tiny perfect objects that will be consumed in seconds and forgotten by morning. But that's Edwardian luxury. Everything is temporary, excessive, designed for the moment. Nothing is meant to last. The experience is what matters. The memory of elegance. The ability to say you took tea in the palm court on the Titanic. You sit back in your wicker chair, teacup balanced in one hand. Outside, the ocean stretches forever. Inside, the palms create a gentle green canopy. The orchestra plays something light and forgettable. And for a moment, you're not on a ship at all. You're exactly where the designers intended you to be. Somewhere impossible. Somewhere perfect, somewhere that exists only for you and the other privileged passengers who can afford to drink Darjeeling tea while floating across the Atlantic. The afternoon light softens. The tea service will continue for another hour, but you're reaching that pleasant state of satisfied rest, where movement seems unnecessary and time feels suspended. Just tea, just cucumber sandwiches, just the gentle sound of wicker and conversation. Just perfection. After dinner, the men retreat. Not all of them. Some prefer the reception rooms, mixed company. Some return to their cabins for rest. But most, the ones who matter, the ones who make deals and form alliances, head to the smoking room. Women are not invited. Not forbidden, technically. Just unwelcome in ways that make the distinction meaningless. The smoking room is masculine territory, designed and decorated specifically for men who want to escape female company, family obligations, and social niceties. You follow the other gentlemen down the corridor. The door opens onto a space that resembles a London gentleman's club. Dark, deeply masculine, almost aggressively comfortable. The walls are paneled in mahogany carved with elaborate Georgian motifs. Stained glass windows, mother-of-pearl inlay creating iridescent patterns, line one side, though at night they're illuminated from behind with electric lights, creating a warm glow. The ceiling is painted in ornate patterns. Leather chairs, burgundy and bottle green, are clustered around small tables. The carpet is thick, patterned, designed to absorb sound and footsteps. The room smells of tobacco, leather, and expensive wood polish. Also whiskey. Definitely whiskey. A steward approaches immediately, offering cigars from a humidor. Cuban cigars, naturally. The best tobacco money can buy, stored at precise humidity levels to maintain perfect smoking quality. You can purchase individual cigars or an entire box. Prices are not discussed openly. That would be vulgar, but you know they're significant. You select one. The steward clips the end with practiced precision and offers you a light. The first draw is smooth, rich, complex flavors that connoisseurs spend hours discussing. Notes of cedar, hints of coffee, undertones of earth and spice. You're not thinking about flavor notes. You're observing the room. Because the smoking room operates on unspoken rules. Protocols that everyone understands without being told. You don't approach strangers directly. You don't discuss business immediately. You certainly don't mention prices, salaries, or anything that quantifies wealth in crude numeric terms. Instead, you settle into a leather chair near the card tables. Other men are already playing. Poker mostly. Bridge. Occasionally whist, though that's becoming old-fashioned. The stakes are not posted. Money doesn't appear on the table. Instead, gentlemen keep mental tallies or write IOUs that will be settled later, privately, through banking arrangements. But the amounts being wagered would shock most people. Hundreds of dollars change hands in a single evening. Sometimes thousands. These are men who own factories, shipping companies, railroads. For them, losing $500 on a card game is entertainment, not catastrophe. Historians still argue whether the smoking room represented sophisticated male bonding or toxic exclusivity. Whether these spaces served legitimate social functions or simply reinforced gender segregation and old boys networks. Some defend them as necessary retreats where men could discuss business freely. Others point out that excluding women from these conversations excluded them from economic power. Academic feminists and social historians have debated this for decades, often heatedly. But in 1912, no one questions it. This is simply how things are. You watch the card game without participating. Acceptable behavior. Observing is part of the ritual. You're assessing the players, their styles, their tells. Whether you want to join the next hand depends on reading the room correctly. One player is John Jacob Astor IV. You recognize him from newspapers. One of the wealthiest men in America, maybe in the world. He's playing casually, his bets moderate, his attention only partially on the cards. He's conversing with another player about real estate in New York, about a hotel he's considering building. This is how deals happen, not in offices with contracts and lawyers, but in smoking rooms with cigars and cards, where fortunes are discussed as casually as weather. The steward circulates with drinks. Whiskey, brandy, port. The selection is extensive. Some men order champagne, though that's considered slightly effeminate unless it's a celebration. The drinks are served in crystal glasses, never cheap glassware. Even the water comes in crystal. You order brandy. Cognac, specifically. The steward knows which brands are available without being asked. The leather chair embraces you. The cushions are perfectly broken in, not new and stiff, but aged to ideal comfort. The chair's arms are wide enough to rest your brandy glass without worry. Around you, conversation forms a low rumble. Men discuss politics, the upcoming election, though that's months away. They discuss business, shipping rates, commodity prices, labor troubles. They discuss technology, the wireless telegraph on this very ship, how it's changing communication, whether investing in radio companies makes sense. They don't discuss their wives, their children, their feelings. The smoking room has boundaries. One man sits alone in a corner, reading a newspaper. The ship's daily newspaper, printed this morning with wireless news from shore. He's smoking a pipe rather than a cigar. Pipes are acceptable, though slightly less prestigious. He hasn't spoken to anyone all evening. Also acceptable. The smoking room allows solitude as much as society. The card game continues. Someone laughs, a short, controlled burst. Not too loud. Edwardian gentlemen don't guffaw. They chuckle. They smile. They express amusement without losing dignity. A new player joins the table. Benjamin Guggenheim, another wealthy American. He buys into the game with a casual gesture, chips appearing from somewhere, the exact amount never stated aloud. The stakes just increased. You notice the stewards never interrupt. They hover at the edges, attentive but invisible. When your brandy glass nears empty, a steward appears to refill it without being summoned. When cigar ash threatens to fall, an ashtray materializes at your elbow. The service is almost supernatural in its precision. Outside the stained glass windows, you know it's dark. The ocean is invisible. But inside, the smoking room creates its own world. Timeless. Separate. A bubble of leather and mahogany and tobacco smoke floating across the Atlantic. Some men have been here for hours. They'll stay until midnight or later. The smoking room doesn't close. It simply empties when the last gentleman decides he's done. Tomorrow morning, stewards will clean and reset everything. Fresh ashtrays, polished glasses, the humidor restocked. You finish your brandy and consider a second. The card game looks interesting now. Astor has folded. Guggenheim is raising aggressively. Someone else is calculating odds, fingers drumming silently on leather armrest. You could join, or you could simply watch, or you could return to your cabin, leaving these men to their cards and their cigars and their careful negotiations about money and power disguised as leisure. The choice is yours. But whatever you decide, you understand now why men value the smoking room. It's not really about the smoking. It's about the space. The permission to be serious without seeming serious. To discuss millions while appearing to discuss nothing. It's theater like everything else in First Class. Just a different stage. Different costumes. Different audience. The cigar smoke drifts lazily toward the painted ceiling, creating soft hazes in the electric light. Someone deals another hand. The evening continues, slow and unhurried, as the ship cuts west through darkness toward New York. While the men smoke and gamble, the women have their own sanctuary, the reading and writing room. It's located on a deck, positioned deliberately far from the smoking room. The separation is architectural, physical, a statement in wood and plaster that men and women need different spaces, different atmospheres, different purposes. You enter through white doors. The contrast to the smoking room is immediate and intentional. Everything here is light. White walls with delicate plasterwork. Cream-colored upholstery on chairs and sofas. Pale green accents in the carpet and curtains. The overall effect is feminine without being frivolous. Refined, quiet, almost aggressively peaceful. The furniture is arranged in conversational clusters. Small writing desks along the walls. Chairs positioned for reading. Sofas where 2 or 3 women can sit together, speaking in low tones. Everything faces inward, creating intimacy rather than display. The room is never crowded. Maybe a dozen women at most, scattered throughout the space. Some sit alone, genuinely reading. Others gather in pairs or small groups, books forgotten on their laps while they talk. A few women sit at the writing desks, composing letters on the ship's stationery. The lighting is softer than in other public rooms. Electric lamps with fabric shades create pools of warm light. Large windows during the day provide natural illumination, though right now it's evening, and the windows show only darkness and the occasional reflection of the room's interior. A stewardess circulates quietly. Not a steward. The reading room is served by female staff. She offers tea, though most women decline, having just finished tea service a few hours ago. She provides fresh stationery if needed. She adjusts lamp positions. She's present but unobtrusive, moving through the space like a ghost. You select a chair near one of the windows. A small table beside it holds current magazines. Ladies' Home Journal, The Strand, Harper's Bazaar, all recent issues, shipped aboard at Southampton. The magazines are organized neatly, their covers pristine. No one has actually read them yet. Or if they have, they've been careful to leave no trace. On the shelves along the walls, you notice the ship's library. Not extensive, maybe 100 volumes. Popular novels, poetry collections, a few reference books. The selection skews towards safe, respectable literature. Nothing scandalous. Nothing that would challenge or disturb. You pick up a novel. Something by Anthony Hope, perhaps. Or Marie Corelli. Authors whose names you recognize from reviews, but whose books you've never quite gotten around to reading. The pages are crisp, unread. The spine cracks slightly when you open it. Around you, the quiet conversation continues in whispers. 2 women near the fireplace. Yes, there's a fireplace, electric but designed to look like coal. Discuss someone's behavior at dinner. Not gossip exactly, just observation. Careful analysis of who said what, who sat where, what it might mean for future social arrangements. Historians still argue whether the reading and writing room was genuinely used for reading or primarily for social strategy. Whether women came here to escape or to plot. Whether the books were props or actual literature. Some scholars point to lending records, suggesting the library saw real use. Others argue the room's true function was providing women a space to talk freely without male oversight. The debate touches on larger questions about women's spaces and autonomy in Edwardian society. But right now you're just tired. Tired of performing. Tired of correct posture and appropriate conversation. Tired of being watched and evaluated. The reading room offers something rare in First Class, permission to be still. You don't have to promenade. You don't have to socialize. You can simply sit with a book, even if you're not reading, and no one will judge you. The room provides social cover for solitude. A woman at a writing desk composes a letter. Her pen moves steadily across the paper. She pauses occasionally, thinking, then continues. You wonder who she's writing to. Family at home? A friend in New York? Perhaps she's documenting the voyage, the luxury, the passengers, the experience of traveling on the most famous ship in the world. The letters will be posted when the ship reaches New York. For more days. For more days of dinners and tea services and costume changes. For more days of being seen, being evaluated, being part of this floating theater of wealth and status. The thought is exhausting and exhilarating simultaneously. Another woman enters the room. She's older, probably in her 60s. She walks with a cane, not because she needs it for balance, but because it's fashionable. The cane is ebony with a silver handle. She settles into a chair near the fireplace with practiced grace. No one greets her directly. That would be presumptuous. Instead, the women nearby offer small nods. Acknowledgement without intrusion. The older woman nods back and retrieves a book from the shelf. She seems to know exactly which one she wants. You notice the room's decorative details now that you're settled. The plasterwork on the ceiling features delicate floral motifs. The carpet, though simple, is high quality, thick enough to silence footsteps completely. The curtains at the windows are silk, heavy enough to block drafts but elegant in their draping. Even the writing desks are beautiful. Inlaid wood, brass fixtures on the drawers, small leather pads for writing surfaces. Each desk has a blotter, an inkwell, a pen holder. Everything you might need to compose correspondence while traveling at sea. The White Star Line thought of everything. Or rather, their designers did. Thomas Andrews, the ship's architect, supposedly walked every inch of Titanic during construction, examining details, suggesting improvements. He wanted perfection. He wanted passengers to forget they were on a ship, to believe they were in the finest hotel in London. He succeeded. Mostly. Occasionally, you feel the ship's motion. A gentle sway. The slightest vibration from the engines far below. But these sensations are so subtle, so carefully engineered away, that you can ignore them if you choose. Outside the windows, the ocean is completely dark. No moon tonight. Or if there is, it's hidden by clouds. Just blackness pressing against the glass. It's easy to forget there are 2,000 miles of water beneath you. Easy to pretend you're in a country house somewhere, reading by lamplight while wind howls outside. But you're not in a country house. You're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, traveling west at 21 knots, surrounded by steel and rivets and engineering that keeps 50,000 tons of metal floating. The contrast between the room's delicate femininity and the massive industrial reality beneath it is striking when you think about it. So you stop thinking about it. You open your book and pretend to read. The words blur slightly. You're more tired than you realized. The day's activities, the promenading, the tea, the dinner, the constant social performance have accumulated. The reading room offers permission to rest without actually retiring to your cabin. You can close your eyes briefly. No one will notice or care. The room is designed for this kind of quiet retreat. A stewardess passes, adjusting a lampshade. The light becomes slightly softer. The women near the fireplace lower their voices even further. Someone turns a page. The sound is almost inaudible. The ship moves steadily west, cutting through dark water toward New York, carrying you and 500 other first-class passengers toward futures you can't yet imagine. But that's for later. Right now, you're in a white room with soft lighting and quiet voices, holding a book you're not reading, surrounded by women who may or may not be doing the same. And it's enough. The next morning, you discover the Café Parisien properly. You visited briefly yesterday during tea service, but the cafe has a different character in late morning. More casual, less structured, a space that exists between the rigid formality of other first-class venues. You enter around 10 a.m. The cafe occupies a section of B deck, adjacent to the area you explored yesterday. The distinction between Café Parisien and the general reception area is subtle, more atmosphere than architecture. But the moment you cross the threshold, you feel transported to Paris, or at least to an Edwardian fantasy of Paris. The furniture is all French. Wicker chairs and tables with that distinctive Parisian café aesthetic. The chairs have cane backs and seats, painted cream or left natural. The tables are small, intimate, designed for coffee and conversation rather than full meals. Ivy climbs the walls. Real ivy or artificial, you can't quite tell. The leaves create a green trellis effect, suggesting an outdoor cafe garden even though you're inside a ship. Potted plants in ceramic containers are scattered throughout. Ferns, small palms, flowering plants that somehow thrive despite the complete lack of natural sunlight. The windows along one side are large, floor-to-ceiling almost. They flood the space with natural light during the day. Right now, morning sun streams through, creating patterns on the checkered floor tiles. The tiles are black and white, arranged in geometric patterns that look simultaneously nautical and Parisian. The overall effect is remarkably convincing. You could almost believe you're sitting at a sidewalk cafe on the Champs-Élysées. Almost forget the Atlantic Ocean rolls just beyond those windows. Almost ignore the gentle vibration of engines 200 feet below. The cafe is half full. Younger passengers mostly. The Café Parisien attracts a different demographic than other first-class spaces. It's more relaxed, less formal. You don't need full morning dress. A good suit is acceptable. Women can wear simpler day dresses. The atmosphere permits casualness that would be inappropriate in the dining saloon or reading room. A waiter approaches, French or affecting a French accent convincingly. He offers you a menu written entirely in French. Coffee is café. Naturally, croissants are available. Actual croissants, baked fresh in the ship's kitchens by pastry chefs who trained in Paris. The menu includes café au lait, espresso, hot chocolate, and various pastries. You order café au lait and a croissant. The waiter nods with that particular Parisian combination of approval and disdain, as if your order is simultaneously correct and hopelessly predictable. While you wait, you observe the other passengers. A young couple at the next table speaks in low voices, heads close together. Newlyweds, probably. Or conducting an affair, it happens. The Café Parisien's relaxed atmosphere makes it popular for both romantic encounters and illicit ones. The staff are discreet. They see nothing, remember nothing. At another table, 3 young men in their 20s laugh over coffee. They're animated in ways that would be inappropriate in the smoking room. Gesturing broadly, voices slightly raised. They're American, judging by accents. Probably recent college graduates on European tours, returning home to start careers in their father's businesses. The cafe permits youth. That's its secret appeal. The other first-class spaces are dominated by older passengers, the wealthy elite who can afford these tickets. But the Café Parisien attracts younger travelers who find the formal dining saloon oppressive and the reception room stuffy. Your coffee arrives. The café au lait is served in a proper French bowl, wide, shallow, designed for dipping croissants. The coffee is hot, smooth, with just enough milk to soften the bitterness. The croissant is perfect, flaky exterior that shatters when you tear it, soft interior with distinct buttery layers. Historians still argue whether the Café Parisien was innovative design or cynical marketing, whether it genuinely provided a different experience or simply repackaged the same luxury with French vocabulary. Some point out that it attracted younger, less traditional passengers who might not have booked first class otherwise. Others argue it was all surface, French furniture and French menus in service of the same Edwardian class system. The debate continues in maritime history journals. But sitting here, sipping café au lait, you don't care about academic debates. You care that this space feels different, looser, less performed. Through the windows, you watch the ocean. It's calm today, blue-green in the morning light. The ship cuts through it smoothly, leaving a white wake that stretches toward the horizon. You're 3 days into the voyage now, halfway to New York. The distance traveled is remarkable when you think about it. Southampton to Cherbourg to Queenstown, then west into the Atlantic. You've crossed hundreds of miles while sleeping, dining, changing clothes 6 times per day. The ship moves constantly, steadily, never stopping except for those brief port calls. and you barely notice the motion. The engineering is that good. The stabilization, the size of the vessel. You can set a cup of coffee on a table and walk away, confident it won't spill. You can write letters without your penmanship suffering from vibration. It's almost unsettling how stable everything feels. A woman enters the cafe alone. Unusual. Women typically travel with companions or wait to be accompanied by men. But she walks directly to a table by the window, orders coffee in fluent French, and opens a sketchbook. She begins drawing. The window view, the ocean, the light. No one bothers her. The Café Parisien allows that kind of independence. Women can sit alone here without scandal, can order coffee without a chaperone, can sketch or read or simply stare at the ocean. It's a small freedom. But in 1912, small freedoms matter. Your croissant leaves buttery crumbs on the small plate. You brush them aside and sip your coffee slowly. There's no schedule to maintain right now. Lunch isn't for hours. You could sit here all morning if you wanted, watching passengers come and go, observing the social dynamics that play out in this French-styled space. The ivy on the walls sways slightly. Ship's motion, probably, or air circulation from the ventilation system. Either way, it adds to the illusion of outdoor dining. Someone at another table orders champagne. At 10 a.m., the waiter brings it without judgment. A small bottle, properly chilled, in a crystal flute. The passenger, a man in his 40s, well-dressed, alone, drinks it slowly while reading a newspaper. This is what the Café Parisien permits. Breakfast champagne, solo sketching, casual conversation without formal introduction. It exists in the margins of first-class propriety, offering slight relaxations of the rigid social codes that govern everywhere else. You finish your coffee and consider ordering another. The waiter appears immediately, anticipating the question. You nod, and he disappears toward the kitchen area. Outside, a steward walks past the windows on the promenade deck. He's carrying folded blankets, probably preparing deck chairs for passengers who want to sit outside. The temperature is cool but pleasant. By afternoon, the promenade will be full of people wrapped in blankets, reading or napping or simply watching the horizon. Your second café, Olé, arrives. You settle deeper into the wicker chair, which creaks slightly but holds comfortably. The checkered floor tiles catch morning light in alternating patterns. The ivy continues its gentle sway. And for a moment, you're not on a ship crossing the Atlantic. You're in Paris, on a spring morning, with nothing to do but drink coffee and watch people and exist without purpose beyond the pleasure of existing. The illusion is complete, perfect, designed specifically to make you forget where you really are. And it works. After your coffee, you decide to take a turn on deck. Promenading. That's the proper term. Not walking, not strolling. Promenading, a word that transforms simple exercise into social performance. You return to your cabin first. Change into appropriate outdoor attire. Men need walking suits, caps, possibly overcoats depending on temperature. Women require full promenading ensembles, tailored walking suits, appropriate hats secured with pins, gloves always, and sturdy but fashionable boots. Remember those 6 outfit changes per day? This is one of them. You emerge onto the boat deck. The first-class promenade is extensive, over 500 feet of teak decking that wraps around the forward section of a ship. The wood beneath your feet is smooth, perfectly maintained, cleaned every morning by crew members you never see. The air is cold, sharp, salty. It hits your face like a slap after the warm interior. The temperature at sea in April is perhaps 45 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to need coats, not cold enough to drive passengers inside. Other passengers are already walking. They move in a slow, counterclockwise circuit. This isn't coincidence. Social convention dictates the direction. Everyone moves the same way, maintaining a steady pace that allows for passing slower walkers while avoiding the appearance of rushing. You join the flow. The rhythm is immediately apparent. Walk too fast, and you seem anxious, uncultured. Walk too slowly, and you create obstacles. The correct pace is leisurely but purposeful, a speed that suggests you have nowhere to be but are pleased to be moving. Stewards have arranged deck chairs along the sides. Heavy wooden chairs with canvas backs and arms. Passengers can reserve specific chairs for the entire voyage. Small metal plaques with their names ensure no confusion. The chairs face outward toward the ocean, each with a folded blanket draped over the back. Some passengers sit bundled in blankets, watching the ocean or reading. Others walk, and walk, and walk. The promenade becomes a slow-motion parade. You pass the same people repeatedly. After the first lap, you begin recognizing faces. The elderly couple moving slowly, arm in arm. The young woman walking alone, her pace brisk, almost defiant. The group of three men discussing something earnestly, their circuit interrupted by frequent stops for emphasis. Each passing requires acknowledgement. A nod, a small smile, perhaps a brief good morning, if you've established prior acquaintance. But not conversation, that would interrupt the flow. The promenade isn't for talking. It's for being seen while appearing not to care about being seen. The ocean stretches endlessly to the horizon. Blue-gray today. Calm. The ship's wake extends behind like a white road pointing back toward Ireland, toward Southampton, toward the world you left 4 days ago. Ahead lies nothing but water and sky, the line between them impossibly sharp. You complete your first lap. 500 feet down, 500 feet back. Your legs feel it already. Not pain, but awareness. Most first-class passengers don't walk much in daily life. Carriages transport them. Servants handle errands. Walking is recreational, not functional. But on Titanic, promenading is mandatory. Expected. You can't claim to have truly experienced the voyage without spending hours walking in circles on deck. Historians still argue whether promenading served health benefits or was purely performative, whether the exercise genuinely helped passengers or simply gave them something to do. Medical journals from 1912 promoted sea air as therapeutic, though the science was questionable. Some scholars suggest promenading was social control, keeping wealthy passengers occupied and visible, preventing them from causing trouble below decks. You pass a lifeboat. It hangs in davits along the deck's edge, white canvas cover protecting the wooden hull. There are 16 lifeboats total, plus 4 collapsible boats. The lifeboats are part of the deck's landscape, present but unremarkable. No one pays them attention. Why would they? The ship is unsinkable. That word again. Unsinkable. Not because of hubris, but because of design. The watertight compartments. The double bottom. The engineering that makes Titanic virtually immune to sinking. The lifeboats are legally required, a formality. Like fire escapes in a fireproof building. You continue walking. Second lap now. Your pace has settled into the correct rhythm. Not too fast. Not too slow. Just right for being observed without seeming to seek observation. A child runs past, laughing. His nanny follows quickly, apologizing to the adults he nearly collided with. Children are supposed to use a different section of deck, away from adult promenading. But they're children. They forget. They run. The nanny corrals him gently, steering him toward the proper area. First-class children have their own deck space, their own games, their own social hierarchy that mirrors their parents. Even at 8 years old, they understand class, who they can play with, who they should avoid. The lessons start early. You pause at the railing, looking out. The water is so dark, so deep, 2 miles deep in some places. You could drop the Eiffel Tower into the Atlantic here and still have hundreds of feet of water above it. The thought is dizzying, humbling. But then you turn back toward the ship, toward the gleaming white superstructure, the massive funnels, the hundreds of windows glowing with electric light, and the ocean seems manageable again, conquered by human engineering. Another passenger approaches the railing beside you. An older gentleman, maybe 60, well-dressed, prosperous-looking. He nods a greeting, and you nod back. Remarkable vessel, he says. You agree. It is. I've crossed the Atlantic 20 times, he continues. Never on a ship like this. Never anything close. He's quiet for a moment, both of you watching the water. My wife says I'm foolish to keep traveling at my age. But I can't seem to stop. Something about the ocean. He trails off, leaving the thought incomplete. You understand. The ocean pulls people. Not everyone. but some find it impossible to resist. The vastness, the power, the reminder that humans are small and temporary and the ocean doesn't care. He tips his cap and continues his promenade. You remain at the railing a moment longer. The sun has climbed higher now. The morning is warming slightly. By afternoon, the deck will be pleasant. More passengers will emerge. The chairs will all be occupied. The promenade will become crowded, requiring more careful navigation. But right now, it's still relatively empty. Peaceful. You can hear the ocean, the rush of water against the hull, the wind in the rigging, the distant cry of gulls. No, wait, there are no gulls this far from land. Just wind, then. Just the sound of 50,000 tons of steel moving through water. You resume walking. Third lap. Fourth lap. Fifth. The rhythm becomes meditative. Foot after foot. Teak planks passing beneath. The same faces appearing, passing, disappearing around corners. The ocean unchanging except for the endless variation of waves and light. Some passengers walk for hours. They complete 20 laps, 30 more. It becomes a point of pride, a way to demonstrate vigor and commitment. I walked 5 miles this morning. Sounds more impressive than I walked in circles on a ship deck. But it's the same thing, just framed differently. You complete your 10th lap and decide that's sufficient. 10 laps. 5 miles, roughly. Enough to claim you've properly promenaded. Enough to have been seen by everyone who matters. You return to the deck chairs and find an empty one. A steward appears immediately with a blanket. He drapes it over your lap without being asked, then disappears. The blanket is heavy wool, warm immediately. You settle in. Watch the ocean. Watch the other passengers continue their circuits. The promenade continues without you. The same faces, the same pace, the same endless loop of walking and being seen and pretending neither matters while both absolutely do. And the ship moves steadily west. Always west, toward New York, toward destinations and futures that feel both inevitable and impossibly distant. You close your eyes, rest, let the sound of ocean and footsteps and distant conversations wash over you. The promenade will still be here this afternoon, tomorrow, the day after. For now, you've done your social duty. You've walked. You've been seen. You can rest. The next morning, you decide to visit the gymnasium. You've heard about it. Passengers mention it with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. The gymnasium on a ship. The novelty alone justifies investigation. It's located on the boat deck toward the front, a dedicated room with large windows overlooking the forward deck. Natural light floods the space during the day, making it bright and airy despite being entirely indoors. You open the door and step into Victorian exercise theory made physical. The room is modest, maybe 30 feet by 20. Linoleum flooring, white walls, windows on 3 sides providing views of the ocean, and machines. Strange, elaborate machines that look like they belong in a science fiction novel rather than a fitness facility. The gymnasium instructor greets you immediately. Mr. T.W. McCauley. He's responsible for this space and everything in it. He wears white athletic clothing, unusual in an era where most people exercise fully dressed, and carries himself with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely believes in physical culture. Welcome, he says. First time in the gymnasium? You admit it is. He launches into explanation mode immediately. The gymnasium contains the latest in exercise equipment. State-of-the-art machinery imported from the finest manufacturers. Everything designed to provide healthful movement without the vulgarity of actual labor. He gestures to the first machine. The electric horse, he announces proudly. You stare at it. It's exactly what it sounds like. A mechanical horse. Saddle, stirrups, reins. But stationary, mounted on a base with an electric motor that creates rocking motion. You're supposed to sit on it and be jostled rhythmically, simulating the health benefits of horseback riding without leaving the ship. Excellent for the liver, McCauley assures you. And the circulation. The science is questionable. But in 1912, electric horses are considered legitimate medical equipment. He shows you the electric camel next. Yes, camel. Because why stop a horse's? The electric camel provides a different rocking motion, more pronounced, more exotic. Supposedly beneficial for different organs, though Macaulay's explanation of which organs and why is vague. Both machines are currently occupied. A gentleman in his 60s rides the electric horse, gripping the reins while the machine bounces him gently. He looks dignified despite the absurdity. A younger man on the electric camel seems less certain about the experience. 10 minutes per session, Macaulay explains. Any longer risks overstimulation. Overstimulation of what remains unclear. You move to the rowing machines. These look more conventional. Actual rowing equipment with sliding seats and pull bars. Several machines are lined up, allowing multiple passengers to exercise simultaneously. The motion mimics real rowing, pulling against resistance, sliding back, repeat. A woman uses one of the machines. She's fully dressed in a walking suit, corset intact, hat pinned to her hair. She rows slowly, carefully, her movements constrained by her clothing. Ladies are welcome between 9 and 11 a.m., Macaulay notes. Separate hours from gentlemen. Naturally. Heaven forbid men and women exercise in the same room at the same time. Historians still argue whether Titanic's gymnasium represented progressive fitness culture or absurd Victorian pseudoscience. Whether electric horses provided any actual benefit or were expensive placebos. Medical historians point out that Edwardian exercise theory was often bizarre: vibration machines, electrical stimulation, mechanical massage. Some of it helped. Most of it didn't. But wealthy people paid for it anyway, convinced that expensive machinery must be superior to simple walking. Macaulay shows you the weight machines next. Adjustable weights on pulley systems. You can increase resistance by adding metal plates. The machines allow for controlled, isolated movement. Bicep curls, shoulder presses, leg extensions. These actually work. Resistance training is effective regardless of era. But the settings are modest. A few pounds of resistance. Enough to provide tone without building muscle. Building muscle will be vulgar. Working class. The goal is maintenance, not transformation. Along one wall, a stationary bicycle. Not like modern exercise bikes. This one is elaborate, ornate even, with a large front wheel and comfortable seat. You pedal against adjustable resistance while remaining completely stationary. It's designed to provide cardiovascular benefits without going anywhere. The metaphor feels appropriate for first class. Lots of effort, no actual progress. Macaulay demonstrates the bicycle with enthusiasm. He pedals vigorously for 30 seconds, then dismounts without breathing hard. Excellent for the Constitution, he declares. You notice the gramophone in the corner. It plays marching music, John Philip Sousa, probably providing rhythm for exercises. The music is tinny, mechanical, but it fills the space with energy. Two children enter with their father. Macaulay's face lights up. Young visitors. He's clearly delighted. Children use the gymnasium frequently. It's one of the few first-class spaces designed with them in mind. They climb on the machines, ride the electric horse with glee, race the rowing machines against each other. The father watches with indulgent smile. His children are 8 and 10, dressed in miniature versions of adult clothing. They approach the electric camel with mixture of excitement and trepidation. Macaulay helps them mount, turns on the machine. The camel begins its rolling motion. The children shriek with laughter. For them, this isn't exercise. It's entertainment. A carnival ride on the world's most expensive ship. They grip the handles, bouncing rhythmically, their faces pure joy. You watch, smiling despite yourself. The gymnasium is absurd. The equipment is questionable. The science is dubious. But the children's laughter is genuine. Real. A moment of simple pleasure in a space designed for complicated adult concerns about health and status. Macaulay turns the camel off. The children dismount reluctantly. Can we try the horse? The older one asks. Of course. And the ritual repeats. The electric horse bounces them gently while they giggle and hold on. You try one of the rowing machines. The seat slides. The pull bar resists. Your muscles engage. It's actually decent exercise, assuming you can row effectively while wearing a full suit, tie, and collar that restricts your neck movement. You manage 3 minutes before stopping. Respectable. Not embarrassing. Macaulay nods approval. Excellent form. Have you rowed before? You haven't. But you accept the compliment anyway. Through the windows, you can see the ocean. The forward deck. Passengers promenading in the distance. The gymnasium occupies prime real estate on the boat deck, with views that would cost extra in any land-based facility. But on Titanic, it's included in your first-class ticket. Free access to electric horses and mechanical camels. Free instruction from a dedicated gymnasium instructor. Free linoleum flooring and Sousa marches on gramophone. The value is difficult to calculate. You thank Macaulay and prepare to leave. Come back anytime, he encourages. Daily exercise is essential for maintaining vigor during ocean travel. You promise to consider it. Outside, the air is cold and salty again. The gymnasium's warmth and absurdity fade immediately. Back to the real world of promenading and costume changes and social performance. But inside that white room with its strange machines, something different exists. Something more honest, somehow. The children's laughter. The absurdity acknowledged through participation. The admission that wealthy people will pay for anything if it's packaged as health and status. You return to the promenade. Resume walking. But you're smiling. Thinking about electric camels and whether your liver really benefited from the rowing machine and how strange it is that on the most advanced ship in the world, people still believe in Victorian exercise contraptions that probably do nothing. Then again, you think people will believe anything if everyone else seems to believe it too. The ship moves west. The gymnasium continues operating. And somewhere inside, an electric horse rocks back and forth, providing questionable health benefits to passengers willing to grip reins and be gently bounced toward New York. That afternoon, you hear about the Turkish baths. Not from official announcements. From overheard conversation. A woman at tea mentions them with a tone of exotic intrigue. Like stepping into Arabia, she says. Absolutely transformative. You're curious. The Turkish baths require an additional fee beyond your ticket price. 4 shillings for a session. But you've come this far. You might as well experience everything Titanic offers. You inquire at the purser's office. They schedule you for tomorrow morning. The next day, you descend. Not to the upper decks where you've spent most of your time, but down. Down several levels. The Turkish baths are located on F deck, far below the waterline, deep in the ship's interior where most first-class passengers never venture. A steward guides you through corridors that become progressively more utilitarian. The carved oak and ornate plasterwork gradually give way to simpler paneling, white painted metal, the functional bones of the ship. You're entering the mechanical areas now. You can hear the engines, not loud but present, a deep thrumming that vibrates through the walls. Then you turn a corner, and suddenly you're somewhere else entirely. The entrance to the Turkish baths stops you mid-step. Elaborate tile work covers every surface. Blue and white geometric patterns. Intricate Islamic designs, stars, arabesques, interlocking shapes that draw your eye inward. The ceiling is decorated with ornate plasterwork painted in golds and reds. Bronze lamps hang on chains, their light filtering through colored glass. This is Arabian Nights. This is the Alhambra. This is an Orientalist fantasy created by British designers who probably never visited Turkey, but absorbed every stereotype from Victorian travel literature and World's Fair exhibitions. It's breathtaking, problematic, beautiful, absurd, all simultaneously. A bath attendant greets you. He's dressed in white, turban included, costume, not culture. He shows you to the changing rooms where you exchange your clothes for a cotton robe and slippers. The rooms are segregated by gender, of course. Separate bathing times. Separate facilities. The Victorian obsession with propriety extends even here, in this space designed to evoke harems and sultans and Eastern exoticism. The attendant explains the sequence. First, the temperate room, then the hot room, then the steam room, finally, the cooling room. Each progressive step increases temperature and humidity, allowing your body to adjust gradually. You begin in the temperate room. More tile work, wooden benches. The temperature is warm but not uncomfortable. Other passengers sit quietly, some reading newspapers, others simply resting. The silence feels sacred somehow. Everyone speaks in whispers if they speak at all. After 10 minutes, you move to the hot room. The heat hits immediately. Not unbearable, but significant. The walls radiate warmth. Your skin prickles. Sweat begins forming on your forehead, your neck, your back. The tile work here is even more elaborate. The patterns seem to shift in the heat haze. Blues and whites and golds creating dizzy geometries that dance at the edges of your vision. You sit, breathe, feel the heat penetrating. Around you, other passengers do the same. Everyone is quiet, meditative. The heat strips away social performance. Hard to maintain dignity when you're sweating through a cotton robe in a room designed to look like a sultan's palace. Historians still argue whether the Turkish baths were authentic cultural experience or colonial appropriation, whether they provided genuine relaxation or simply packaged Orientalism for wealthy Western consumption. Some scholars defend them as appreciation of Turkish bathing traditions. Others point out the costumes, the stereotypes, the way exotic cultures were commodified for entertainment. The debate touches larger questions about cultural exchange versus exploitation in the Edwardian era. The steam room is next. You open the door and moisture hits like a wall. Dense, hot, almost visible. You can barely see across the room through the steam. You find a bench by touch more than sight. Sit. Let the heat and humidity envelope you completely. This is the deepest heat you've experienced. It penetrates muscles you didn't know were tense. Your breathing slows, deepens. The steam opens your lungs, your pores, something fundamental in your chest. Time becomes unclear. Minutes stretch or compress. You're not sure which. Other passengers are just shapes in the mist. Anonymous, equal. Rich and poor would look the same here, except poor people aren't allowed in first-class Turkish baths. The equality is illusion. But in the steam, the illusion holds. Eventually, the attendant indicates you should move to the cooling room. The temperature change is shocking. Not cold, but dramatically cooler. Your body adjusts gradually, the sweat drying, your heart rate slowing. The cooling room has plunge pools. Small rectangular pools tiled in blue and white. The water is cold. Not icy, but bracing. You hesitate only briefly before entering. The cold grips every nerve. Your breath catches. But after the heat, the cold feels necessary. Balancing. Your body needed this contrast. You emerge, and the attendant offers towels. Thick, white absorbent. You dry off in stages, your body still adjusting to normal temperature. Then massage tables. Optional, but included in your fee. The massage is professional. Strong hands working muscles loosened by heat and cold. No conversation, just pressure, release, the quiet work of relaxation. When it's finished, you return to the changing rooms. Dress slowly. Your body feels different, looser, cleaner somehow. The Turkish baths delivered what they promised. Not authenticity, but transformation. You emerge back into the corridor. The functional white walls and metal fittings seem harsh after the tile work and colored lamps. Reality after fantasy. The mechanical heart of the ship after the Orientalist dream. You climb the stairs back to the familiar first-class decks. The grand staircase. The reception room. The world of carved oak and electric chandeliers. It all seems slightly unreal now, as if the Turkish baths revealed something true about the ship, that underneath all the luxury and performance, there's just steel and water and human bodies trying to stay comfortable. But that thought fades quickly. By the time you reach the promenade, you've re-entered the social world. The costumes, the protocols, the careful dance of status and appearance. The Turkish baths become memory, exotic, separate, a journey downward into heat and steam and Arabian fantasy, followed by return to the ordinary, extraordinary world of first class. You schedule another session for 3 days from now, because whatever else it was, appropriation, appreciation, absurdity, the Turkish baths worked. Your body feels better. Your mind feels clearer. The heat and cold and steam accomplish something that promenading and 10-course dinners cannot. The ship continues west. Above deck, Passengers walk and dine and perform their rituals. Below, in tiled rooms deep in the ship's interior, steam rises and water cools, and the fantasy of the Orient provides temporary escape from the fantasy of unsinkable luxury. Both illusions, both carefully maintained, both, in their way, necessary for surviving the crossing. You're discovering that Titanic isn't just a ship. It's a floating city, complete with services you didn't know you needed until you found them. The barber shop is your first discovery. Located on sea deck, tucked into a small but immaculately maintained space. You pass it during one of your wanderings and decide spontaneously to enter. 2 barber chairs, leather and chrome. Mirrors on the walls, making the small room seem larger. The familiar smell of bay rum and talcum powder. Razors lined up precisely. Towels folded and stacked. The barber greets you with professional warmth. He's experienced. You can tell from how he assesses your hair, your beard, your general grooming in a single glance. Trim, sir, or shave? You opt for shave. Why not? You're on the most luxurious ship in the world. A professional shave seems appropriate. He seats you, drapes a hot towel over your face. The heat opens your pores, relaxes muscles you didn't know were tense. He removes the towel, applies shaving soap with a brush, works it into lather against your skin. The razor is straight, sharp, dangerous in untrained hands, but his hands are very trained. The blade glides across your jaw, your neck, your upper lip. Smooth, precise strokes. Never hesitation, never a nick. He talks while he works. Small observations about the voyage, the weather, other passengers he's served. Nothing indiscreet. Barbers keep secrets, but enough conversation to make the service feel personal. When he finishes, your face is smooth, raw, sensitive. He applies aftershave, bay rum again, stinging briefly, then powder. Brushes away any stray hairs from your collar. You look in the mirror. You look refined, groomed, ready for whatever social performance awaits. The cost is nominal. Added to your ship's account. You'll settle everything at the end of the voyage. Next door, you discover the photographer's studio. Also small, also immaculate. A camera on a tripod. Backdrop curtains. Lighting equipment that looks expensive and complicated. The ship's photographer offers to take your portrait. For a fee, naturally. But the portraits are high quality, printed on board, delivered to your cabin within a day. Some passengers have multiple portraits taken. Different outfits. Different poses. Documenting their first-class experience with professional photography. You decline for now. Perhaps later in the voyage. The inquiry office is more utilitarian. A desk. A clerk. Files and ledgers organized with military precision. This is where you handle official business. Post letters. Send telegrams via the Marconi wireless system. Inquire about arrival times, weather reports, messages from shore. The clerk is efficient. He answers questions before you finish asking them. He's dealt with hundreds of passengers asking the same things. He knows what you want before you do. Behind him, the wireless operators work in shifts, constantly sending and receiving messages. The wireless room is separate. Only operators and select crew allowed, but you can hear the faint tapping of Morse code. Dit-dit-da. The sound of communication spanning hundreds of miles instantaneously. Passengers send telegrams for business. For pleasure. Arrives safely, ship magnificent, all well, goes out dozens of times daily. The cost is per word. Some passengers send novels. Others compress everything into 5 or 6 carefully chosen words. The wireless represents the cutting edge of technology in 1912. Ships no longer travel in isolation. They're connected ashore to other vessels, to the wider world, even in mid-ocean. Historians still argue whether the wireless improved maritime safety or created overconfidence, whether constant communication helped or whether captains began relying too heavily on warnings instead of their own judgment. The Titanic receives ice warnings via wireless, multiple warnings over several days. Whether those warnings were properly heeded remains a subject of bitter, scholarly debate. But right now, the wireless is just another luxury service. Another way first-class passengers maintain connection to their important lives. You also discover the library lending system, not the small collection in the reading and writing room. That's different. This is an actual lending library with a catalog system. You can request books. They'll be delivered to your cabin within hours. The selection emphasizes popular novels and recent publications. Nothing too challenging. Nothing controversial. Light reading for people who want entertainment without effort. There's a lending library for gentlemen, a separate one for ladies. Different catalogs, different books. Even reading is gendered, controlled, organized into appropriate categories. You request a novel, something adventurous but respectable. The librarian, actually a steward assigned library duties, makes a note. The book will arrive before dinner. The ship also has a printing press. The daily newspaper, the Atlantic Daily Bulletin, is printed on board every morning. News received via wireless is compiled, edited, typeset, and printed. By breakfast, newspapers are distributed throughout first class. You've been reading it every morning without thinking about the labor involved. Somewhere in the ship's interior, men work through the night operating printing equipment, producing newspapers that will be read once and discarded. Every service requires invisible labor. The barber maintains his equipment. The photographer develops his plates. The inquiry office clerk files his papers. The librarian tracks his books. The wireless operators tap their code. Behind every luxury, someone works. The ratio is extraordinary. One crew member for every 2 first-class passengers. The service feels magical because the labor is hidden. You return to the promenade thinking about this. The ship is a city, but it's a city where one class lives in luxury while another class serves them invisibly. The separation is architectural, functional, absolute. Different staircases, different dining rooms, different quarters. The crew exists in parallel spaces, maintaining the illusion that everything happens automatically. You pass a steward in the corridor. He's carrying fresh linens. He nods respectfully. You nod back. Brief acknowledgement. Then he's gone. Back to whatever task requires his attention. Back to the invisible labor that makes your comfort possible. The services aboard Titanic are remarkable. The barber, the photographer, the inquiry office, the library, the newspaper, the wireless connecting you to distant shores. All of it represents the peak of Edwardian luxury. But it also represents a system, a hierarchy, a world where some people are served and others serve, and the boundary between them is carefully maintained. You reach your cabin. The book you requested is already waiting. Delivered by a steward you never saw, placed precisely on your writing desk. Magic, or labor, made invisible. Same thing, really, depending on which side of the service you're experiencing. You open the book. Begin reading. Let the ship's services fade into background assumption, because that's what they're designed to do. Work so smoothly you forget they're working at all. Sunday morning arrives with particular significance. Not because it's Sunday necessarily, but because Sunday at sea carries weight. Tradition. Expectation. There will be a church service. Captain Smith himself will conduct it. This is standard practice on British passenger ships. The captain holds dual authority, commanding both the vessel and the souls aboard. For this 1 hour, he becomes quasi-clergy, leading passengers in worship. You dress carefully. Sunday's service requires proper attire, though not quite as formal as dinner. Morning dress. Conservative. Respectful. The service is held in the first-class dining saloon. The same room where you ate 10-course dinners now transforms into a cathedral. The tables have been cleared away. Chairs arranged in rows. A small lectern positioned at one end. You arrive early and find a seat toward the middle. Other passengers filter in gradually. Families together. Elderly couples. Younger passengers looking slightly uncomfortable in the unfamiliar religious context. Some first-class passengers attend regularly. Others come only on ships, where attendance is expected, observed, part of the social contract. The room fills slowly. No one speaks above a whisper. The usual dinner conversation, light, social, performative, is replaced by something quieter, more subdued. Whether genuine reverence or social conformity is difficult to determine. Probably both. Captain Smith enters precisely at 10:30 a.m. He's in full dress uniform, white beard perfectly trimmed, medals displayed. He looks exactly as a ship's captain should look, authoritative, experienced, utterly confident. He moves to the lectern, opens a prayer book, surveys the assembled passengers with calm assessment. Then he begins, "Let us pray." The service follows Anglican liturgy, familiar prayers, readings from Scripture, hymns sung without instrumental accompaniment, just voices rising together in the large room. The acoustics are surprisingly good. The dining saloon wasn't designed for worship, but the high ceiling and oak paneling create acceptable resonance. The hymns sound thin at first, then strengthen as more voices join. Eternal Father, strong to save, is inevitable. The Navy hymn, the sailor's hymn, for those in peril on the sea. Everyone knows the words, or pretends to. The first verse comes confidently. Eternal Father, strong to save, whose arm hath bound the restless wave. By the final verse, voices have gained strength, conviction, something approaching genuine emotion. O Trinity of love and power, our brethren's shield in danger's hour. The irony will be noted later, extensively, bitterly, but right now it's just a hymn. Traditional, expected. No one thinks about the lyrics too carefully. Captain Smith reads from the gospel. His voice is steady, practiced. He's done this dozens of times across multiple voyages. The words are familiar through repetition. Then he offers a brief homily, not quite a sermon. He's not ordained clergy, just observations about gratitude, about the privilege of traveling safely across dangerous waters, about trusting in providence and engineering alike. He mentions the ship's speed, the calm seas, the excellent crew. Everything blurs together. Divine blessing and human achievement presented as complementary rather than competing. The congregation listens politely, attentively. No one sleeps, though some look tempted. Historians still argue whether Sunday services aboard ships represented genuine faith or social control, whether passengers attended from belief or obligation, whether the services provided spiritual comfort or simply reinforced class hierarchy and national identity. Academic theologians and maritime historians debate the role of shipboard religion. Was it authentic worship or performance designed to maintain order? Another hymn, Nearer, My God, to Thee perhaps, though accounts differ about which hymns were sung which Sundays. The service continues its measured pace. Prayer, Scripture, benediction. Captain Smith closes the prayer book, offers final blessings, dismisses the congregation with words about enjoying the rest of their Sunday. Passengers stand slowly. Conversations resume at low volume. The room transforms back from cathedral to dining saloon almost immediately. The sacred moment passes, returns to ordinary. You file out with the others. Outside, the day is bright, clear, cold but beautiful. The ocean stretches endlessly in all directions, dark blue under Sunday morning sun. Some passengers head immediately to change clothes. Sunday service attire is uncomfortable for promenading. Others gather on deck, continuing the subdued mood, discussing the service or the weather or nothing in particular. You notice the ship's officers moving about with purpose. Sunday inspections, another tradition. Captain Smith and his senior officers will walk through every section of a ship today, checking safety equipment, reviewing crew readiness, ensuring everything is maintained to standard. But passengers don't see that work. They see only the captain who just led worship, now resuming his nautical duties seamlessly. Lunch will be served soon. A simpler meal than usual. Sunday lunch is traditionally lighter. Cold meats, salads, bread and cheese. Nothing requiring extensive kitchen labor. Even the crew deserves some rest. The afternoon stretches ahead lazily. Sunday aboard ship is meant to be restful. No organized activities. No pressure to socialize aggressively. Just quiet reading, gentle promenading, perhaps tea later. You find a deck chair. Request a blanket from a passing steward. Settle in to watch the ocean. The Sunday service fades from mind quickly. It was brief, expected, not particularly memorable. Just one more ritual in the series of rituals that structure first-class life. But mark the day. gave Sunday its particular character, separated it from the other days of the voyage. And perhaps that was the point. Not deep spirituality, not life-changing revelation, just structure, rhythm, a moment of collective acknowledgement that despite the luxury and engineering and human confidence, something larger exists. The ocean, the sky, the distance between safety and peril. The hymns contained wisdom. Those in peril on the sea require protection, divine or human or both. But on this Sunday morning, with calm seas and clear skies and a captain who radiates competence, peril seems distant, theoretical, something that happens to other ships, lesser vessels, crews without Titanic's advantages. You close your eyes. Let the sun warm your face. Let the sound of ocean and distant conversation wash over you. Sunday, day of rest. Even at sea, especially at sea, the ship continues west. Always west. Toward New York. Toward completion. Toward whatever futures wait on the other side. But that's for later. Right now it's Sunday. And Sunday means rest. Music follows you everywhere on Titanic. Not silence. Never silence. The ship is designed with a soundtrack. There are 8 musicians aboard. Professional performers hired specifically to provide constant musical accompaniment to first-class life. They work in shifts, rotating through different venues, ensuring that whenever you enter a public space, music is present. The orchestra leader is Wallace Hartley. From Lancashire, experienced band leader who's worked on multiple ships. He selected the other musicians himself, assembling an ensemble capable of handling diverse repertoire. Classical, popular, ragtime, hymns, whatever the moment requires. You notice them first during dinner. 5 musicians positioned at one end of the dining saloon. They play while you eat. Nothing intrusive, nothing that demands attention. Just pleasant background texture that makes conversation easier. Silence is less awkward. They play light, classical pieces. Popular melodies from London shows. Occasionally ragtime, though not during the soup course. Ragtime is considered too energetic for proper dining. The musicians are professionals. They read the room, adjust tempo and volume based on the crowd's energy. When conversation becomes animated, they play softer. When the room seems tired, they inject slightly more life. After dinner, some of them move to the reception room. A different configuration, perhaps a trio instead of 5. They play while passengers have after-dinner coffee, while couples stroll arm in arm, while the social dynamics of first class continue their elaborate dance. The music here is slightly more modern, more ragtime, some popular songs that passengers might recognize and hum along to. Alexander's Ragtime Band, perhaps. Oh, You Beautiful Doll. Songs that suggest entertainment without demanding it. Late at night, 1 or 2 musicians might play in the Café Parisien. Solo piano, quiet violin. Music for passengers who aren't ready to retire but don't want full orchestra. The musicians also play during Sunday service. Hymns, naturally. They provide the musical structure for worship, though they're not visible during the service itself. Position where they can be heard but not seen. They're everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. You've heard them dozens of times without really listening. They're part of the environment, like the oak paneling, like the electric lights, present but unremarkable, until you start paying attention. Then you notice details. The violinist's technique is excellent, conservatory trained probably. The cellist handles difficult passages with ease. The pianist never misses a key, never rushes a tempo, never draws attention to his own skill. They're good, very good, but their talent is deployed in service of background music. They're not meant to be noticed. They're meant to enhance everything else. Historians still argue whether shipboard musicians were artists or servants, whether their work represented legitimate performance or simply animated decoration. Musicians' unions debated this exact question in 1912. Should ship musicians be classified as entertainers or crew? The answer determined wages, working conditions, legal status. The debate revealed uncomfortable questions about who counts as artist versus who counts as hired help. But the passengers don't think about this. They simply enjoy the music without considering the labor involved. The musicians work long hours, split shifts. They perform during breakfast, lunch, tea, dinner, and evening socializing. Between sets, they practice, maintain instruments, prepare new repertoire. They share cramped quarters in second-class accommodation. Not crew quarters, but not first class either. A strange in-between status. They eat in second-class dining room, use second-class facilities, but they work exclusively in first-class spaces. They're liminal, boundary crossers, allowed in exclusive spaces but not belonging to them. You watch them during dinner one evening. Really watch, instead of letting them blur into background. Wallace Hartley conducts with subtle gestures. He's not showy. He guides his ensemble with minimal movement, a nod here, a glance there. They respond immediately, in perfect synchronization. They've worked together for weeks now. Since Southampton, they know each other's rhythms, tendencies, quirks. They function as single organism despite being separate individuals. The music they play is pleasant, forgettable, designed to be forgotten, but the skill required is considerable. Sight reading, constantly changing repertoire, adjusting to acoustics in different rooms, playing for hours without break, maintaining perfect pitch and tempo despite fatigue, despite weather, despite the ship's motion affecting bow control and finger placement. It's harder than it looks. You've taken the music for granted. Everyone has. That's the point. The musicians succeed when they're invisible, when the music seems to generate spontaneously rather than through labor. But they're there, always there, providing the soundtrack to your privilege. One evening, you approach Wallace Hartley during a break. Thank him for the music. Compliment the ensemble skill. He's gracious, modest, pleased by the acknowledgement. Most passengers never speak to the musicians directly. They're fixtures, not people. We enjoy playing for such an audience, he says. It's quite an honor, really. First voyage on Titanic. Quite something. You chat briefly. He mentions his fiancée back in England. They're planning to marry after this voyage. He's saving money. Ship work pays reasonably well for musicians. Better than working in hotels or restaurants. Then his break ends. He returns to his ensemble. They begin playing again. The conversation fades. The music resumes its role as background texture. But you hear it differently now. You hear the labor, the skill, the hours of practice behind each seemingly effortless phrase. The ship continues west through darkness. In the public rooms, music plays. In the private cabins, passengers rest. In the engine rooms, machinery thrums. In second-class quarters, off-duty musicians sleep or practice or write letters home. Everything interconnected, everything functioning, everything supported by labor, visible and invisible, acknowledged and ignored. The music is beautiful. That's undeniable. But it's beautiful because skilled musicians work long hours to make it seem effortless. Because someone chose the repertoire carefully. Because instruments are maintained and tuned. Because professionals coordinate their timing and blend their sounds into seamless whole. Magic requires preparation. Beauty requires work. The soundtrack of privilege is performed. Always. By people whose names most passengers never learn. You notice the children gradually. They're present but peripheral. Seen but somehow separate from the adult social world. First class has its own small population of children. Perhaps 24, ranging from infants to teenagers. They have their own routines, their own spaces, their own rules. The youngest children rarely appear in public spaces. Infants and toddlers remain in cabins with nannies or mothers. You might glimpse them during supervised deck time, carefully bundled against the cold, surrounded by watchful attendants. But the older children, ages 6 to 14, have more freedom. Carefully controlled freedom, but freedom nonetheless. They have their own dining room, not the grand first-class dining saloon where adults eat. A smaller space where children take meals under supervision. The food is similar but simplified. Fewer courses, less elaborate preparation. No wine, obviously. The children eat earlier than adults. Their dinner is at 5:30 p.m., allowing nannies to settle them before adult dinner at 7. You pass the children's dining room one evening. Peek inside. The atmosphere is different from adult dining. More animated. Children talk louder, laugh more freely. The social constraints that govern adult meals are relaxed here. Not absent, but softer. Still, rules apply. Proper table manners are enforced. Correct posture. Appropriate conversation volume. These children are being trained for their future roles as first-class adults. Even their more relaxed meals serve educational purposes. The children have designated deck space, a section of the boat deck reserved for their use during specific hours. Here they can run within limits, play games, approved games, make noise, reasonable noise. Nannies supervise constantly, usually one nanny per family, sometimes shared between families traveling together. The nannies are young women, typically in their 20s, from respectable but not wealthy backgrounds. They occupy that strange servant status, crucial to family function but rarely acknowledged. You watch the children play one morning. They're playing ring games, tag variations, simple activities that burn energy without becoming too wild. A boy of perhaps 10 leads a group in some elaborate imaginary scenario involving pirates or explorers, hard to tell from overheard fragments. A girl sits alone reading. She's 12 or 13, already too old for childish games, but not yet ready for adult society. That awkward in-between age. She's dressed like a miniature adult. Long dress, pinned hair, uncomfortable posture, suggesting corset training has begun. She looks lonely, or perhaps just patient, waiting to age into relevance. The children's social hierarchy mirrors their parents. Wealthy children play with other wealthy children. Famous families' children receive deference. Even at 8 years old, they understand status. One boy is traveling with his father, John Jacob Astor's son from a previous marriage. The other children treat him differently, more carefully. Adults do the same with his father, and children observe, learn, replicate. Historians still argue whether first-class children experienced genuine childhood or premature adulthood training, whether they were protected or pressured, whether the structured environment served their development or simply programmed them to perpetuate class systems. Child development experts and social historians debate the psychological impacts of growing up in such wealth and restriction. The teenage children occupy even stranger territory. Too old for the children's dining room, too young for adult tables. They eat in awkward transition spaces, sometimes with younger siblings, sometimes alone with their chaperones. A teenage girl practices promenading with her mother, learning the correct pace, the proper acknowledgement gestures, the art of being seen. She's being trained. Every aspect of first-class life must be learned, and the training starts early. A teenage boy stands at the railing alone, smoking, or trying to. His cigarette technique is unpracticed, awkward. He's performing adulthood, testing boundaries while his parents are elsewhere. You remember being that age. The strange space between childhood and whatever comes next. Though probably not in these circumstances. Not on the most expensive ship in the world, surrounded by this much wealth and expectation. Some children seem happy, genuinely delighted by the ship, the ocean, the adventure of crossing the Atlantic. They explore within their permitted boundaries, make friends with other children, enjoy the novelty. Others seem burdened, aware already that their lives are not entirely their own, that expectations surround them, that their behavior reflects on family reputation, that mistakes have consequences. The nannies manage everything. They navigate between parental expectations and children's needs. They maintain discipline without being harsh. They entertain without being frivolous. They're invisible except when problems arise. In the gymnasium, children have scheduled access. Remember those electric horses and camels? Children love them. They ride with unself-conscious joy that adults can't quite access anymore. Mr. McCauley, the gymnasium instructor, is gentler with children than adults. He lets them play, climb on equipment, experiment. For children, the gymnasium is entertainment. For adults, it's health maintenance. The difference shows in how McCauley conducts sessions. You watch a family gather for afternoon tea in the palm court. Mother, father, 2 children around 8 and 10. The children sit properly. Speak when addressed. Don't fidget much. But you see the effort. the constant self-monitoring. They're performing childhood within acceptable adult parameters. The parents seem pleased. Their children are well-behaved, a credit to family, evidence of proper upbringing and good breeding. But what do the children feel? Impossible to know. They've learned already not to show discomfort or boredom. They've learned the mask. Later, you see the same two children on deck with their nanny. The parents are elsewhere. The children are different immediately, more animated, more themselves. They run within boundaries, laugh louder. The nanny smiles indulgently. The performance relaxes when the audience changes. As the voyage continues, you notice the children less and less. Not because they're absent, but because they're so successfully integrated into the background of first-class life. They appear when expected, behave appropriately, then disappear back into their separate world. They're training for the future, learning the roles they'll occupy as adult first-class passengers, absorbing lessons about status, behavior, expectations. Some will rebel eventually. Some will embrace it. Some will simply accept it as the only world they know. But for now, they're children aboard Titanic, playing within boundaries, growing up in privilege, inheriting a world that will vanish before they're old enough to fully claim it. Though, of course, they don't know that yet. Nobody does. You've been aboard for days now, and you're starting to see them. The invisible army. The servants who make everything work. The crew members whose labor creates the illusion of effortless luxury. They've always been there. You just weren't looking. Your steward, for instance. You know his face. You've interacted with him dozens of times. But do you know his name? His story? Where he's from? Whether he has family waiting? Probably not. He appears when needed. Brings your breakfast tray. Tidies your cabin while you're at lunch. Turns down your bed at night. Lays out your evening clothes. Ensures fresh towels appear in your bathroom. Removes your shoes for polishing. He does all this invisibly. You never see him working. You see only the results, the made bed, the organized wardrobe, the polished shoes returned to perfect placement. He's one of over 300 crew members serving first class. 300 people whose names you don't know, whose faces blur together in white uniforms and deferential postures, whose entire purpose is making your comfort seem automatic. The stewards work impossibly long hours. 15, 16, sometimes 18 hours per day. They rise before passengers wake. They retire after passengers sleep. The work never stops because first class never stops demanding service. They share cramped quarters in the bowels of the ship. Multiple men per cabin. Narrow bunks. Minimal personal space. The contrast with first-class accommodations is stark. You have a suite with private bathroom. They have a bunk and a shared washroom down the corridor. The pay is modest. They survive primarily on tips. Expected tips. Tips that aren't quite required, but absolutely necessary. First-class passengers are supposed to tip generously. Some do. Some don't. The stewards can't complain. Then there are the stewardesses. Female crew serving female passengers. They help women dress. Manage the complex architecture of corsets, petticoats, and gowns. They style hair. They pack and unpack luggage. They provide female company and assistance in ways male stewards cannot. The stewardesses are mostly young women, working-class backgrounds. This job represents significant income for them, better than factory work, better than domestic service on land. But the hours are brutal and the social isolation profound. They occupy strange space between passengers and crew. Not quite servants, not quite employees, something in between. They have access to private passenger spaces, but must remain professionally invisible. You've noticed your stewardess. Mid-20s, perhaps. Efficient. Always appropriate. She never makes eye contact unless necessary. Never initiates conversation. She exists in your periphery, maintaining your comfort without disturbing your awareness. You don't know her name either. The dining room staff form their own complex hierarchy. Waiters, assistant waiters, wine stewards, kitchen crew, each with specific roles, specific uniforms, specific places in the service structure. The head waiters earn respect. They've worked for years, mastered their craft, earned positions of responsibility. They know wine. They know service. They know how to read a room and adjust accordingly. The assistant waiters are younger, learning. They do the heavy work, carrying trays, clearing tables, refilling water glasses. The visible labor that makes the head waiter's performance possible. Below decks, the kitchen crew works in heat and noise that first-class passengers never experience. Coal-fired ranges burning constantly, multiple courses being prepared simultaneously. The complexity of producing hundreds of meals daily while the ship moves through the ocean. These crew members never see passengers, never enter first-class spaces. They work in industrial kitchens that look nothing like the elegant dining saloon. They're invisible twice over, both functionally and literally. Historians still argue whether Titanic's crew were adequately trained for their roles, whether the company prioritized service over safety, appearance over preparedness. Some scholars point to inadequate lifeboat drills, insufficient safety training, crew members who didn't know emergency procedures. Others defend the crew's professionalism within their assigned duties. The debate becomes especially bitter when discussing who deserved to survive and who didn't. But right now, you're just noticing them, really seeing them for the first time. The steward who brings tea to the reading room. The stewardess who manages the Turkish bath attendants. The barber who shaves your face with steady hands. The musician who plays for your dinner. The librarian who delivers your books. The wireless operator who sends you telegrams. Every luxury requires labor. Every comfort requires someone working. The ratio is extraordinary. One crew member for every 2 first-class passengers. Sometimes the ratio is even higher. Certain passengers have personal servants in addition to ship's crew. The labor is specialized, hierarchical, organized with military precision. The crew members have different uniforms depending on rank and role, different dining facilities, different recreation spaces, different rules about where they can go and when. They exist in parallel world. Same ship, different universe. You pass a steward in the corridor. He's carrying folded linens. He steps aside immediately, making space for you to pass. His posture is deferential. His expression is neutral. You nod acknowledgement. He nods back. Brief moment of human recognition. Then he continues his work. You continue your leisure. The boundary reasserts itself immediately. Some passengers treat crew with kindness. Others treat them as furniture, functional but unworthy of notice. The crew must accept both with equal professional grace. They cannot complain, cannot show frustration, cannot reveal fatigue. The performance of cheerful service is mandatory. Tips depend on it. Employment depends on it. You think about the crew members who work in the engine rooms, the stokers who shovel coal, the engineers who maintain machinery, the workers who exist in heat and noise and danger that first class never sees. Those men never come above deck, never see passengers, never experience any of the luxury their labor makes possible. They're the most invisible of all, the foundation supporting everything else. Without them, the ship doesn't move. Without them, the electricity doesn't flow. Without them, nothing works. But first-class passengers never think about them. Why would they? The engines work. The lights function. The ship moves. The mechanism is invisible and therefore irrelevant. You return to your cabin. Your steward has been here. Everything is perfect. Fresh towels. Bed turned down. Tomorrow's clothes already laid out. A small mint on your pillow. Unnecessary detail that someone thought would please you. You lie down. Close your eyes. And for the first time, you think about the person who made this bed, who polished these shoes, who arranged these clothes. You don't know his name, his story, his dreams. You just know that he served you today and will serve you tomorrow and the day after, until New York, until the voyage ends, until you disembark and never think about him again. The invisible army works on, making luxury possible, making comfort seem automatic, making wealthy passengers feel like the ship runs itself. But it doesn't run itself. It runs on labor. Invisible, constant, essential labor. Without them, first class is just empty rooms and cold food and unmade beds. With them, it's paradise. The finest experience money can buy. The difference is everything and nothing, depending on which side you're on. Night falls differently at sea. No gradual transition from city lights to darkness. No street lamps flickering on. No familiar landmarks dimming into silhouette. Just the sun lowering toward the horizon, then disappearing. The sky bleeding through orange and red into deep blue. Then black. Complete black. You're on deck during this transition. Many passengers are. Watching the sunset has become a nightly ritual. People gather at the railings, bundled in coats and blankets, watching the day end. The ocean catches the last light, reflects it, holds it briefly, then releases it to darkness. Someone near you comments that it's beautiful. It is, but it's also unsettling. Because when full darkness arrives, you understand how isolated you are. The ocean is black. Not dark blue. Not navy. Black. Absolute. The water and sky merge into single void. No horizon line. No distinction between up and down except for the stars. And the stars. So many stars. More than you've ever seen. More than should be possible. The sky is crowded with them. Bright stars, dim stars, stars in clusters, and streams and swirls. The Milky Way stretches overhead like spilled milk. No light pollution. No cities within hundreds of miles. Just stars and darkness and the ship. The ship itself becomes a constellation. Electric lights glow from every window, every deck, every public space. The portholes create patterns, geometric, regular, man-made. The ship looks like a floating hotel, a city of light drifting through nothing. From a distance, if anyone were out there to see it, Titanic must be spectacular, a brilliant jewel moving through darkness. Impossible to miss, visible for miles. But there's no one out there, no other ships nearby, just empty ocean in every direction. You return inside. The transition from cold darkness to warm brightness is sharp, comforting. The interior spaces feel safer somehow. Contained. Known. The evening continues its familiar pattern. Dinner. Music. Socializing. The same rituals, but the darkness outside changes them subtly. Makes them feel more necessary. More defiant. As if by maintaining normal routines, you're denying the darkness. Refusing to acknowledge the vast, empty nothing surrounding you. Below decks, the engine room crews work through the night. They operate in shifts, 4 hours on, 4 hours off continuously. Day and night mean nothing in the engine rooms. Just the constant rhythm of machinery. The heat, the noise, the coal that must be fed continuously into the boilers. The stokers shovel coal in darkness, lit only by furnace glow. Their world is fire and shadow. They don't see the stars. They don't see the ocean. They see only the work directly before them. 24 hours a day, the engines turn. The propellers push. The ship moves west at 21 knots. Never stopping. Never slowing except for brief course adjustments. The navigation is precise. Officers on the bridge track position constantly. They use stars for celestial navigation. They calculate speed and distance. They chart course with instruments and mathematics and years of experience. The ship knows where it is, where it's been, where it's going. But standing on deck at night, you don't feel that precision. You just feel small. Historians still argue whether nighttime visibility on Titanic was adequate for safe navigation, whether officers could see obstacles in time to avoid them, whether the ship traveled too fast for conditions, whether the darkness was respected or ignored. The question becomes crucial later, bitterly debated, endlessly analyzed. But tonight, the darkness just feels peaceful. You remain on deck longer than usual, watching the stars, listening to the ocean. The water rushing past the hull creates constant white noise. Soothing, hypnotic. Other passengers drift away gradually, returning to warmth, to light, to the familiar comforts of interior spaces. Eventually, you're alone on this section of deck. Not completely alone. There are night watchmen, officers on duty, crew members maintaining their posts. But alone among passengers. Just you and the darkness and the stars. The ship vibrates slightly beneath your feet. Engine rhythm translated through steel and wood. Constant. Reliable. The heartbeat of the vessel. You can see your breath in the cold air. Feel the wind on your face. Smell the ocean, salt and cold, and something else. Something ancient and indifferent. The railing is cold under your hands. The metal pulls heat from your skin. You should go inside. You will soon. But this moment feels important somehow. Standing between the bright ship and the dark ocean. Between human confidence and natural power. Between the world you know and the world that exists without caring whether you exist. Inside, laughter drifts from the reception room. Music, conversation, the sound of people maintaining civilization through force of will and electric lighting. Outside, nothing. Just waves and wind and darkness that goes on forever. You turn finally. Walk back toward the warm interior. A steward opens the door for you. The light and heat rush out. You step inside. The door closes behind you, and the darkness remains outside, where it belongs, separate from the bright, safe world you inhabit. You head to your cabin. The corridors are quiet now. Most passengers have retired. The public spaces are emptying. The ship is settling into night. Your cabin is exactly as you left it, except your steward has been here. Turned down the bed, left a glass of water on the nightstand. Ensured everything is perfect for your rest. You change into night clothes. The familiar routine. The same actions you'd perform on land. As if you weren't in the middle of the ocean. As if location didn't matter. You lie down. Close your eyes. Through the walls, through the hull, you can still feel the engines. The vibration. The constant motion west. The ship doesn't sleep. It can't. It moves continuously, cutting through darkness, carrying you toward New York, toward morning, toward all the tomorrows that wait ahead. But right now it's night, deep night, the darkest part of the voyage. And you're safe, warm, comfortable in your bed, protected by steel and engineering and human confidence. Outside, the Atlantic stretches forever. Cold, dark, indifferent, but outside doesn't matter. You're inside, where light and warmth and civilization hold back the darkness. You drift towards sleep. The ship's motion rocks you gently. The engines hum their constant rhythm. Tomorrow will bring another day, another round of meals and socializing and promenading, another day of rituals and performances. But tonight you rest, carried through darkness by a ship that doesn't stop, toward a destination you can't yet see but trust completely. And the night continues. The ship moves. The stars wheel overhead, and everything seems fine, safe, certain. Everything seems like it will last forever. Sunday, April 14th dawns clear and cold. Your fifth day aboard. Almost routine now. You know the rhythms, the schedule, the patterns of first-class life at sea. You wake naturally, dress in morning clothes, ring for breakfast. The same rituals as yesterday, as the day before. Nothing feels different. Nothing suggests this day is anything other than another peaceful crossing. The morning begins with church service. Remember Captain Smith at the lectern? The Anglican liturgy. The hymns about those in peril on the sea. It all happens again. Same prayers. Same readings. Slightly different hymns perhaps, but the structure identical. After service, you promenade. The deck is busier than usual. Sunday brings out passengers who skip weekday walking. The air is sharp. Cold. Colder than previous days, you think. But still beautiful. Still calm. The ocean is flat. Remarkably flat. Like glass. The ship cuts through it smoothly, leaving a wake that stretches straight behind you. Perfect conditions for crossing. Several passengers comment on the cold. Someone mentions ice. Ice warnings received via wireless. The ship is adjusting course slightly south to avoid ice fields reported in the area. But no one seems concerned. Ice is expected this time of year. Ships navigate around it constantly. The officers know what they're doing. Lunch is leisurely. Sunday lunch always is. Cold meats, salads, simple preparations that allow kitchen staff some rest. You eat with acquaintances you've made during the voyage. The conversation is pleasant, light. Someone tells a joke about the gymnasium's electric camel. Someone else discusses plans for New York. Hotels, restaurants, shows they want to see. New York feels close now. Tomorrow evening, probably. Maybe Tuesday morning. The voyage is almost over. There's a strange feeling about this. Relief mixed with regret. You're ready to arrive. The ship's luxury has become almost normal, which diminishes it somehow. But you'll also miss this. The suspension of regular life. The floating world where nothing matters except the next meal, the next promenade, the next social performance. Afternoon tea in the palm court. Remember the wicker furniture? The potted palms creating that Parisian illusion? It's crowded today. Sunday tea is popular. You find a seat with difficulty. The waiter brings your Darjeeling. The three-tiered stand with sandwiches and scones and pastries. You've eaten this exact meal 4 times now. It should feel repetitive. Instead, it feels comfortable, familiar. You know what to expect. You know it will be perfect. The orchestra plays ragtime in the corner. Something cheerful, upbeat. The Sunday afternoon mood is relaxed. Happy. People are smiling, laughing gently, enjoying the luxury without the pressure of performance. This is what they paid for. This exact feeling, this exact moment of contentment. You finish tea and return to your cabin. Change into warmer clothes. The temperature is definitely dropping. You've noticed other passengers doing the same. More coats, heavier wraps. Evening promenade is beautiful. The sun sets in spectacular colors. Orange, red, deep purple. The cold makes the colors more vivid somehow. More intense. You walk slowly, watching the sunset. Watching the ocean turn from blue to gray to black. Watching the stars emerge. Other passengers do the same. Quiet conversations. Peaceful observations. No one rushes. Dinner is the usual elaborate affair. 10 courses. Multiple wines. Excellent service. The dining saloon is nearly full. Sunday dinners are well attended. You're seated at your regular table. The same faces you've dined with all voyage. The conversation flows easily now. You know each other slightly. Enough to make dinner pleasant without demanding real friendship. The banker from Philadelphia tells a story about his business. The textile merchant's wife discusses fashion she saw in Paris. The widow traveling alone mentions her daughter in New York. Small revelations. Small connections. The orchestra plays throughout. Wallace Hartley conducts with his usual subtle competence. The music enhances everything without demanding attention. After dinner, you move to the reception room. Coffee, cordials, more music, the evening social hour. Some passengers head to their cabins early, tired from the day's activities. Others settle in for hours of conversation and cards. You're somewhere in between, not tired enough to sleep yet, not energized enough for late-night socializing. You return to your cabin around 10:30 p.m. The corridors are quiet. Most passengers have retired or are in public spaces. You pass a steward carrying fresh linens. He nods. You nod back. Your cabin is perfect. Bed turned down. Water glass filled. Tomorrow's clothes laid out. Everything exactly as it should be. You prepare for bed slowly. The familiar routine. Change clothes. Wash face. Brush teeth. The same actions you perform on land. You lie down. Pull the covers up. The cabin is cool. You've adjusted the heating dial down slightly. The fresh, cold air feels good after the day's activities. Through the walls, you hear the engines, the constant vibration, the rhythmic hum that never stops. The ship moves through darkness. West, always west, toward New York, toward arrival, toward the end of this floating interlude. Outside, the Atlantic is perfectly calm. Flat, cold, dark. The ship cuts through it at 22.5 knots, faster than usual. Making good time. Captain Smith wants to arrive on schedule, perhaps early. A successful maiden voyage. The stars are brilliant tonight, bright and cold. No moon, just stars and darkness and the ship's lights reflecting on calm water. Everything is fine. Everything is perfect. Everything is exactly as it should be. The voyage has been flawless. 5 days of luxury. 5 days of performance. 5 days of experiencing what first class truly means. Tomorrow you'll wake to another beautiful day. Another round of meals and promenading and social rituals. One more perfect day before arrival. You close your eyes. Let the ship's motion rock you gently. Let the engine's rhythm lull you towards sleep. April 14th is ending peacefully. A perfect Sunday. The last perfect day of the voyage. Though, of course, you don't know that. You can't know that. All you know is that you're comfortable, safe, cared for, carried through darkness by the finest ship ever built. And that's enough. More than enough. You drift towards sleep. The ship continues west. The night deepens. And somewhere ahead, invisible in the darkness, something waits. But that's for later. For after sleep. For tomorrow. Tonight, you rest. Safe in the knowledge that everything is fine. Everything has been fine. Everything will continue to be fine. The ship is unsinkable. The crew is competent. The engineering is perfect. Nothing can go wrong. Nothing will go wrong. You believe this completely. Everyone believes it. And with that certainty, that absolute confidence, you sleep. The last perfect sleep of the voyage. The last perfect night. April 14th, 1912. A day that will be remembered forever, though not for the reasons anyone aboard could imagine. But you don't know that yet. You're just sleeping. Peacefully. Safely. Until you're not. The voyage was supposed to be 7 days. 7 days of crossing the Atlantic in unimaginable luxury. 7 days of 10-course dinners and Turkish baths and electric horses and promenading in circles while the ship carried you effortlessly toward New York. For 4.5 days, it was exactly that. Everything promised. Everything delivered. The finest experience money could buy aboard the most remarkable ship ever built. You experienced it all. The grand staircase with its clock crowning honor and glory. The suite with its private bathroom and running hot water. The costume changes 6 times per day, every outfit perfect, every appearance calculated. You ate cucumber sandwiches while floating across the Atlantic. You took tea in a room designed to look like Paris. You sat in Turkish baths deep below the waterline, surrounded by Orientalist fantasy and steam. You watched children ride electric camels. You listened to musicians whose names you never learned. You were served by an invisible army of workers whose labor made your comfort seem automatic. You promenade in the cold Atlantic air, watching the ocean stretch forever in every direction. You attended church service led by a captain who radiated absolute confidence. You slept in a bed made by hands you never saw, in a cabin perfected by someone whose name you don't know. It was luxury, real luxury, the kind that exists only when wealth and engineering and human labor align perfectly to create something extraordinary. And it was temporary, all of it, temporary in ways no one could imagine. The ship was called unsinkable, not from arrogance, but from engineering. 16 watertight compartments, double-bottomed hull, the finest marine architecture available in 1912. It could survive almost anything. Almost. But the ocean is older than engineering, deeper than human confidence, more powerful than any ship, no matter how fine. The luxury you experienced was real. The 4.5 days of perfect crossing actually happened. The meals were that elaborate. The service was that flawless. The comfort was genuine, but was also fragile, built on assumptions that seemed solid but weren't, carried by confidence that felt justified but proved insufficient. The voyage was meant to continue. 2 more days of crossing, arrival in New York to crowds and celebration and triumph. The successful maiden voyage of the greatest ship in history. Instead, it became something else. Something that would be remembered forever, but not for the luxury. Not for the perfection. For what came after. The Turkish baths you visited, gone. The gymnasium with its absurd electric animals, gone. The Café Parisien with its wicker furniture and potted palms, gone. The reading room where women could sit quietly. The smoking room where men played cards for thousands. The grand staircase with its magnificent dome. All of it, gone. Not immediately. Not in some dramatic instant. But gradually, inevitably, as cold water rose through decks designed never to flood. As engineering proved insufficient. As the impossible became real. The musicians played. You know this now. Everyone knows this now. Wallace Hartley and his orchestra played while the ship died. They provided soundtrack to catastrophe, made beauty in the face of ending. The crew worked. Stewards and stewardesses helping passengers. Engineers staying at their posts. Wireless operators sending distress signals until water silenced them. People whose names you never learned, doing their jobs until they couldn't anymore. The invisible army remained invisible. Working, serving, dying mostly Because crew survival rates were lower than passenger rates. Because they stayed at their posts. Because someone had to maintain order while luxury unraveled into chaos. The children you watch playing on deck, some survived. Some didn't. Families separated. Nannies making impossible choices. Mothers holding infants. The strange world of first-class childhood interrupted by something no one prepared them for. You experienced 4.5 days of perfection. 4.5 days of luxury that was real, tangible, exactly as advertised. And then it ended. Not gradually, not fairly, just ended. The stories from that night are well known now. The lifeboats that left half empty. The steerage passengers trapped below decks. The wealthy men who lived and the poor women who died. The randomness, the chaos, the complete collapse of the systems that made everything work so smoothly. But before that night, there was the voyage, the real voyage, the experience of first-class luxury at its absolute peak. The grand staircase was that beautiful. The dining saloon was that elegant. The service was that perfect. The engineering was that impressive. It just wasn't enough. Against the ocean, against ice, against circumstances that engineering couldn't predict and confidence couldn't prevent, it wasn't enough. Historians still argue about everything. Who was responsible? What should have been different? Whether the luxury itself was obscene or simply unfortunate. Whether first-class passengers deserved their higher survival rates or simply benefited from proximity to lifeboats. The debates continue. Bitter, endless, unresolved. But the luxury was real. That's not debatable. For 4.5 days, Titanic delivered exactly what it promised. The finest experience money could buy. The peak of Edwardian confidence and comfort. You experienced it, lived it, slept in those cabins, walked those decks, ate those meals, performed that social dance of status and appearance. It was real, all of it. Real luxury, real comfort, real confidence that everything would be fine. Until it wasn't. The voyage you experienced, the complete first-class experience, exists now only in memory, in photographs, in accounts written by survivors, in endless analysis and recreation. The ship itself is gone, 2.5 miles down, slowly disappearing into rust and darkness and time. But for 4.5 days in April 1912, it existed. Fully, perfectly, exactly as designed. And you were there, walking those decks, sleeping in those cabins, living that luxury. The experience was real. The comfort was genuine. The beauty was authentic. It just didn't last. Couldn't last. Wasn't meant to last, though no one knew that yet. Everything ends. Everything is temporary. Even the finest engineering. Even most careful planning. Even absolute confidence. The ocean doesn't care about luxury. Doesn't care about engineering. Doesn't care about human certainty or beautiful staircases or 10-course dinners. The ocean just is. Vast. Cold. Indifferent. Powerful beyond measure. And for 4.5 days, a remarkable ship crossed that ocean, carrying people who believed they were safe, who believed engineering had conquered danger, who believed luxury meant immunity. They were wrong. But for 4.5 days, they were also right. Because during those days, everything worked. Everything was perfect. Everything was exactly as promised. The voyage that almost was. The complete crossing that never happened. The 7 days reduced to 4.5. But those 4.5 days were real. Were experienced. Were everything Titanic was meant to be. And now you know what it was really like. In first class. In a luxury. In a confidence. Before everything changed. Before the ending no one imagined. Just the voyage. The experience. The luxury that was real while it lasted. Real and temporary and remarkable and gone. All of it. Gone. Except for the memory. The story. The endless fascination with those 4.5 perfect days and what came after. You've walked through it now. Seen it. Felt it. Understood what first class really meant aboard Titanic. The luxury. The labor. The confidence. The beauty. The temporary perfection of a world that existed briefly and then vanished. And now, having experienced it, having walked those decks and eaten those meals and slept in those cabins, you can rest. You can let the story go. Let the ship sink into memory where it's already resting. Let the 4.5 days of luxury remain what they were: real, remarkable, and ultimately insufficient against the power of the ocean. But they happened. They were real. And for the people who experienced them, for those 4.5 days, they were everything. Close your eyes now. Let the ship's rhythm fade. Let the grand staircase dim. Let the dining saloon empty. Let the orchestra finish their final song. Let all rest. The luxury, the labor, the beauty, the ending. Let it rest in the darkness. 2.5 miles down. Or here, in quiet memory. Either way, let it rest. And you rest too, having walked through history, having experienced what it was really like, before everything changed, before the world turned cold, before the impossible became real. You've seen it now. The luxury, the life, the 4.5 perfect days. And that's enough. More than enough. Rest now. Let the story settle. Let the ship rest in its deep grave. Let the memory exist without disturbing your peace. The voyage is over. The luxury has ended. The ship is gone. But you've been there. You know now. You understand. And with that understanding, you can finally sleep. Deep, peaceful, safe. Not on a ship crossing the Atlantic. Not in luxury or danger. Just here, now, in the quiet darkness of rest. The story is told. The voyage is complete. The luxury is remembered. And you can sleep. Sleep soundly. Sleep peacefully. Sleep knowing that you've walked through history and emerged on the other side. The ship is resting. The ocean is calm. The story is over. And you can rest too. Deep, quiet, peaceful rest. Sweet dreams.